Chapter 23:49. Laval only felt a pulling force pulling him into the secret tunnel at the base of the saint's statue. When he came back to his senses, he was already in a bright and pure white corridor. There were many doors in this pure white corridor. They were arranged on the left and right, extending all the way as if there was no end. Laval forcefully shook his head to clear his mind. He subconsciously opened the door closest to him. With just one glance, Laval would never forget it. He didn't open a door, but a world. In this world, what he saw was flames, blood, and countless corpses. Angels with golden wings were singing war songs. A beautiful blonde woman was standing on a mountain made of white bones, coldly looking down at the ground. She is the Saint of Freedom. Laval was shocked and instinctively stepped back. Suddenly, Laval forcefully closed the door of the room. He was already covered in cold sweat from the shock. At this moment, Laval once again saw a Robert, who brought him to this place. "What is this place?" Laval blurted out. Robert, who was covered in wounds but had endured until now with his inhuman willpower, what was his background? He actually knew about the place hidden under the statue of the god that even the family of the saints didn't know about. "You are very scared, right?" Robert said indifferently. "Why should you be scared? She is the Saint of Freedom, the saint you believe in. Everything here is what she had experienced." Laval's expression changed slightly, and he said with a trembling voice, "You mean all the rooms here are the memories of the saint?" "They are my memories." Robert shook his head. He walked to the end of the corridor and said in a voice that only he could hear, "I'm just reminiscing about her. Her soul is no longer here. How could her memories be left behind?" "Wait, Robert. Tell me clearly." Laval wanted to catch up, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up with the other party. "Don't care about your body here," Robert said indifferently. "Use your mind and you will walk faster." "Who are you?" Laval frowned and asked. "Just now? Just now when you pulled me in," that voice resounded in the free cities. Who is it that wants us to worship them? Did the saints' resurrection ceremony succeed?" "Quiet," Robert turned around and said calmly. Laval instinctively stopped and didn't say anything. He looked into the other party's eyes and felt as if his soul was trembling. This, Robert, was clearly suppressing his terrifying injuries. He was clearly panting when he walked, and he was clearly very weak. Yet, he made Levis tremble. His gaze was dignified and solemn. He was an absolute ruler. "I'll tell you." At this moment, Robert said faintly, "I will tell you everything about myself because I can feel that I will soon forget who I am. My existence will completely disappear. Perhaps in the near future, I'll just be a person with the name Robert, a person who doesn't even know who I am." "You, Robert," continued walking, and his hoarse voice sounded slowly, "I was once the Grand Monarch of the Kingdom of Heaven, the Archangel who controlled the entire army of the Kingdom of Heaven. My name is Saint Michael, also known as Michael. There are no records of Michael in the ancient books." Laval shook his head. "But, I feel like you're not lying?" "Don't be surprised," Robert said calmly. "I said that my existence has been erased, and the world won't remember me. Even you might forget it after hearing it." Laval's expression changed drastically. "How is that possible? Who can make the Grand Monarch of the Kingdom of Heaven disappear?" Robert didn't explain this matter. He only said slowly, "Listen, what you're going to see next is the truth of the free cities. The truth of the Saint of Freedom, the truth of the Kingdom of Holy Light, and even the truth of the Kingdom of Heaven." Laval felt his heart start beating rapidly. In the pure white corridor, he walked past many doors, and he had the urge to open them. Behind each door, there seemed to be a strong call. However, Robert didn't stop talking. In the beginning, he, the father of the angels, was only he himself. He was wandering in the void. He was searching for something, searching for a forgotten home. Suddenly, he stopped. He knew that it would be difficult to find that place by himself. Therefore, he needed many, many servants who could walk on his behalf. Therefore, he used 7 days to create a world. Lavar's breathing quickened because he knew that Robert was talking about the process of he creating the world. The process of creation was similar to what Lavar had read in the ancient books, except for the purpose at the beginning, which was completely different. He thought that this version of the process of creation would continue to be similar, but he didn't expect that this wasn't the case. Later, he realized that the world created couldn't exist in the void for a long time. This was because there were countless creatures in the void known as the void original demons. He was powerful enough, but he couldn't resist the invasion of the void original demons all the time. Countless believers were devoured by the void original demons before his eyes. In the beginning, he might have created a new world for a certain purpose, but later, he realized that he had fallen deeply in love with every living creature in the new world. Therefore, he found a solution, and that was to rent a complete area. The story of renting the kingdom of heaven began to appear in front of Lavar's eyes. At this moment, Lavar's previous beliefs were overturned in an instant. He even started to think that Robert was spreading rumors. Metatron's sudden death was like a conspiracy. Robert sighed and said, "The chain reaction caused by this incident was something that the kingdom of holy light couldn't bear." In the end, the free saint became the final sacrifice of this conspiracy. This is impossible. What a joke. The kingdom of heaven betrayed the free saint and even pawned the saint. Not only that, in the past few hundred years, they even found another person to play the role of the free saint. And all of this was just to obtain the faith of all the believers in the free city. Even the people in the free city, and all the believers in the 7 capitals of the kingdom of holy light were just chosen by the angels and brought over from different subworlds. The entire kingdom of holy light was like a huge faith manufacturing factory. Yes, what kind of joke is this? Robert sighed. I also often ask myself why I did this. In order to maintain the existence of the kingdom of heaven, we need to find more faith. We keep exploring, spreading, and fighting. In the end, it's almost equivalent to spreading for the sake of spreading, exploring for the sake of exploring, and fighting for the sake of conquering. In the past countless years, the faith of the kingdom of heaven has spread to countless subworlds, and the kingdom of heaven has become the absolute overlord of the void. But looking back, what have we obtained? What have you obtained? Lavar asked bitterly. Nothing. Robert shook his head. We keep obtaining faith, but at the same time, we keep giving it away. In fact, if we're not careful, we even have the risk of losing ourselves. We've already lost a free saint. Is this worth it? Is it worth it? Lavar muttered to himself. Robert closed his eyes. I can clearly remember the names of every soul that I've given away and their experiences. But now I'm starting to forget these. They disappear from my memory piece by piece. Sometimes, I can't help but think, if we didn't rent the kingdom of heaven back then, if we were still struggling to survive in the void, what would we be like? Without the prosperity of the kingdom of holy light now, without the large-scale spread of faith, without all of this? Lavar continued. Would you still be willing to see this? Even if it's us, there will be times when we have conflict. Robert sighed softly. Whether it's in the past or now, we are just fishes struggling in the long river of fate. Robert suddenly stopped. He still couldn't see the end of the pure white corridor, but at this moment, the end of the corridor appeared in front of Robert. There was also a door at the end. Robert slowly pushed the door open. I didn't dare to open this door. This is the place where I buried my sins. He muttered softly and walked in slowly. I started to forget that all of this will leave me. This isn't a punishment for me. Instead, it's my redemption. Time can't be reversed. Only by forgetting can I. In Lavar's eyes, Robert was more like a person who was walking towards the sea. He was going to walk into the boundless sea and let the sea swallow him. He was going to be buried in the sea forever and ever. Inside the room, it was also a pure white place. There was a transparent crystal here. Lavar saw the Saint of Freedom in the crystal pillar. She seemed to be in a deep sleep. She seemed to be waiting for someone in the crystal pillar. There was a faint smile on her face. But at this moment, in this crystal pillar, in front of this sleeping woman, there was already a figure standing there. Before the door at the end of the corridor was opened, this figure was already there. Robert suddenly stopped and looked at the figure in front of him with a complicated expression. He didn't know if it was because of his burned vocal cords or because of himself, but Robert didn't speak at this moment. Laval seemed to be able to hear his own heartbeat. He suddenly recognized who this figure was. Rose Mansion Lee, the guest of Arthasheth. That mysterious young man with black hair and black eyes. Luaccio. Tell me, Michael. Luaccio's voice sounded in the silence. You said time can't be reversed. Then, if time can be reversed, what would you do? What would I do? Robert muttered, What would I do? I think I might replace her. She used to trust me so much and listen to my voice. Under my guidance, she walked to the peak step by step, and then I pushed her down the cliff in an instant. Luaccio said indifferently, handing her over was his idea. Robert said in a low voice, but the person who executed it was me. I sent her out myself. I didn't resist, didn't doubt, and didn't hesitate. Do you regret it? Boss Luo turned around. You have to answer this question because I've been waiting for you here. No, I don't regret it. Robert shook his head. There's nothing worth regretting. It's not worth it, all of this isn't worth it. Sacrifice isn't worth it, battle isn't worth it, search. Perhaps it's not worth it. For Primordial we've missed out on too many things. Your answer, Michael, Boss Luo asked softly. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Those who believed in me were buried by my own hands. No matter how many god systems I attack, no matter how many believers I have, I can't get rid of this sin. Robert seemed to have lost all his strength in an instant, but he also seemed to be glowing with new strength, so, take it back. Take back this kingdom of heaven. Let faith no longer be just a tool for us. It was originally the purest. Robert stared at Boss Luo motionlessly. He was also waiting for an answer at this moment. I've been waiting for your arrival here, Luaccio said softly, not as the store manager. Personally. Robert understood and muttered to himself, You're going to take her away, no matter what. Luaccio said indifferently, I'll thank you for helping me preserve her body. In this absolutely pure room. You've even been secretly nourishing her with the power of will of the free cities. That's why you deliberately stored her in the statue. Robert was silent. I'm going to take her away. Boss Luo spoke again. It's not to compensate for anything in Kingdom of Heaven. This is just my personal action. Robert's lips moved slightly, but he didn't say anything in the end. Come back, Archangel. Boss Luo said indifferently. This isn't your redemption. From now on, you have to continue fighting. You have to continue spreading faith. You have to continue maintaining the existence of Kingdom of Heaven. While you have to let more people obtain happiness, you also have to let the same number of people feel despair. You have to listen to the sorrowful cries of believers every day. Why? Robert roared. Why? Luaccio said faintly. You personally pulled her into the abyss of despair. How can I forgive you? Robert instantly knelt on the ground in a daze. In an instant, all the wounds on Robert's body healed instantly, and the bandages wrapped around him broke directly. He wailed. As he wailed, the wings of a blazing angel grew violently from his back. The pure white wings were actually stained with blood. Luaccio disappeared, and even the crystal pillar disappeared. The pure white room was no longer bright. Laval was already frightened long ago. He looked at the blood-stained wings in horror and said with a trembling voice, Me, Saint me, you're the Lord of Kingdom of Heaven, the Prince of Light. I'll praise you. Don't look at me. Hashtag PS. 1/5. This chapter ends. Chapter 2350. High up in the sky. Miss Maid's battle flag, which continued to release power, was in a stalemate with the cubes around Princess Angelique. Miss Maid, who was dressed in a white spiritual dress, didn't look relaxed. The power of the royal family was the power of fate. Only when one faced it, one would know how terrifying it was. What was fate? Generally speaking, fate seemed to be linked to time. However, it was too general to only use the attribute of time to summarize the power of fate. Miss Maid was the partner candidate designated by the origin. If there were no accidents, she would be able to accompany Boss Luo to stand on the other side of the river of time and space. She would be completely independent of all the subworlds built by the Araya system. She would be independent of all the subworlds' abilities. It could only be described as an exception. At least, her soul had reached this level. However, the power of the royal family could be penetrated. It could penetrate the long river of time and space, reach the other side, and cause damage to the origin. The power of origin and fate seemed to be contradictory to each other. At this time, Miss Maid could feel that the surging power had broken through the dimensional barrier and was attacking her soul on the other side of the world. It didn't matter whether there was a real body or not for this level of collision. The body was just a carrier that could support this level of collision for a longer time. However, the attack on the soul level was often only for a moment. A moment could be eternity. The durability brought by the body as a carrier was not very useful. If the soul was destroyed, even if the body still existed, it was naturally meaningless. It was just like Cain in the inhuman domain of subworld number 03. The pseudo-eternal indestructible body that Cain obtained from the shop was almost indestructible. Even if Cain's consciousness had disappeared, the body still existed. It even began to produce a new consciousness. But the new consciousness only inherited Cain's memory. It was already a different person in essence. Princess Angelique directly attacked by penetrating the dimensional barrier. Obviously, she didn't intend to do anything to Miss Maid's puppet body. She was obviously proud. Since she wanted to fight, she had to defeat her opponent in what she was best at. The two of them did not move. Only the sky seemed to have split into two different formations. There was only a blurry line between the grayish-white and the grayish-black. But even so, this kind of confrontation was still a terrifying disaster for the free cities and even the entire Holy Light Nation. In the air, there seemed to be some invisible and terrifying thing that was crazily colliding with each other. A huge crater would appear on the ground in an instant. Skyscrapers would suddenly collapse. Wind, fire, thunder, and lightning filled every corner. Cracks in space would appear and disappear, and then continue to appear. Even gravity was fluctuating wildly. Where exactly are they fighting? Lady Nan's binoculars suddenly exploded. The strange scene made her shiver uncontrollably. The other shore. They are on the other shore. Little Madanzo muttered to herself, has Joan of Arc already gone there? Sure enough, being good-looking is an advantage. Higgin? Lady Nan was stunned. To her, this was an unknown territory. Little Madanzo shook her head. I can't explain it to you. You know about ultimate contenders, right? Transcendents and inhumans who have reached the limit of a subworld can be called ultimate contenders. Ultimate contenders can no longer improve. If they want to improve, they can only break the seal of the subworld. Nan Xiaonan pouted her lips. In the dimensional void, aren't ultimate contenders everywhere? If it wasn't for the dimensional void being infinitely big, the ultimate contenders you mentioned can be squeezed into a crowd. She was also such a contender in the past. The dimensional void also has such a limit. Little Madanzo suddenly said, "Only those who can reach this limit can see the other shore. But that's all." Then, what's the danger in the battle on the other shore?" "Danger?" Madanzo laughed bitterly. "How would I know? I have never been there. At most, I have only glanced at it from afar." Good heavens! This fellow is obviously saying that it has seen the scenery of the other shore. This B** starred Nan Xiaonan gave it 99 points. The 1 point less was deducted because it asked her to pray. At this moment, Nan Xiaonan's expression suddenly changed. Her binoculars that had exploded actually appeared out of thin air again. No, it didn't appear out of thin air. It was as if time was reversed, returning to the state before it exploded. Not good, these two crazy women. It seems that they are serious. Madanzo's expression changed greatly. Damn. Time is starting to be disrupted. Miguel, how much is the time disrupted? At the side, the owner of the palace of the second day, who was typing with his foot, looked quite gloomy. The extent. It's more like spreading. It's not just the Holy Light Kingdom, it's the entire kingdom of heaven. Madanzo pondered for a moment and quickly said, "The Garden of Eden should be able to withstand it. That's where he lived. Moses is at the ring tower. If he is willing to part with his little pornographic book, Revelation, it should be able to withstand it. Anyway, the holy city guards have as many angels as you want. They are all free. So, you don't have to worry about the holy city guards. Miguel, I will help you stabilize the Holy Light Kingdom. This is the foundation of the kingdom of heaven." Miguel couldn't help but frown. "Did you miss something? You don't have to worry about the palace of blazing sky? Do you really think that Raphael is a pushover?" Madanzo rolled her eyes. "The star of dawn has fallen. Michael has become the boss of the angels, and the next in line is Raphael. Why do I suddenly remember this idiot Michael? I didn't know him just now. F***ck, I don't care anymore. Nan Xiaonan, continue to pray. Don't stop. Let me help, Metatron." A light voice came. Madanzo and Nan Xiaonan looked over subconsciously. They saw a man in white slowly descending. 6 wings, holy light, the grand monarch of the kingdom of heaven, the head of the archangels. Michael? Madanzo and Miguel looked at each other. Miguel nodded and said directly, "That's good. That's the best. Give me the defense authority of the kingdom of heaven." The man in white was silent. "What the F***ck are you hesitating for?" Madanzo said angrily. "Metatron, tell me," Michael said seriously, "your faith hasn't changed. You are all a bunch of liars. I don't believe in anyone anymore." Madanzo gritted her teeth and said, "I only believe in myself. Anyway, in your eyes, I am a special person. Is this okay?" Michael looked at Madanzo expressionlessly for a few seconds and said calmly, "Except for Eden, all the other areas are open to you. Help me guard the kingdom of holy light." Little Madanzo suddenly spat out her pacifier and said with a frown, "Something is wrong with you." Michael said calmly, "I'm the grand monarch of the kingdom of heaven. Guarding the kingdom of heaven is my duty, and spreading faith is my mission. What's wrong with that?" "I can't explain it." Madanzo shook her head. "It's just that your words give me goosebumps. Forget it, I won't talk about this with you. Go and be a light bulb. Maximize your holy light effect and shine on all the places in the kingdom of holy light. Stabilize the believers in the other 7 cities first. Don't mind it. This is my style of speaking. You know, as a special person, I can't." "I understand." Michael immediately agreed. Without the slightest hesitation, this grand monarch of the heavenly kingdom instantly turned into a stream of light, illuminating the entire holy light nation with his brilliant light. This guy, when did he become so easy to talk to? Madanzo opened her mouth in disbelief. "Raquel, don't you feel that something is wrong with Michael?" What did you say?" "Raquel." Raquel was still typing with his foot. "Do you want to help or not? This is it. The other side. The other side should be the place where the purest soul resided. It wasn't a specific place, and there were no traces to be found. It was just a concept. It could take any shape. The other side of the world looked like a shop. Moreover, it was a shop that had been enlarged hundreds or thousands of times. Miss Maid, wearing a pure white spiritual dress, stood on the clean floor. At the same time, Princess Angelique looked around curiously. The other side is the place that can reflect a person's heart the most. So, is this the place you care about the most? The origin that appears in the shape of a shop? Yes, Miss Maid said softly. This is the place where I first met my master. I will never forget that day when someone sat outside the door and quietly looked in. It was as if he wanted to isolate himself from the rest of the world. He just sat there quietly and thought. Princess Angelique asked softly, Did he have a good life in this life? Sorry, I don't quite understand what you mean. Miss Maid said indifferently, For me, my master is just my master. There's no previous life. Unless it's a relationship confirmed by my master, I don't care about anything else. I like your character. Princess Angelique chuckled. Besides, I'm sorry to use this method to pull you into the other side. There are some words that I can only say to you here. However, you've already guessed my intention. You cooperated well. This is worth extra points. Miss Maid said, In Miss Gaia's diary, Your Highness is the type of person who doesn't mean what you say. So, I'm wondering why Your Highness chose this time to appear. If it's to directly take over the Holy Light Kingdom, the time is a little too early. But, I don't know Your Highness' intention. No need to use honorifics. Angelique shook her head. The Empire no longer exists, and I'm no longer a princess. I'm just a remnant now, wandering in the void. I don't know where I'll go tomorrow. Miss Maid pondered. Then, Miss Angelique, what are you doing this time? To take a look at him. Angelique said, The power of the royal family is opposite to the origin. I can feel any changes caused by the origin. So, from the moment he started to take over, well, from the moment he took over this shop, I already knew that he had returned. You mean, come back? Miss Maid frowned subconsciously. This is what I'm going to tell you next. And only you. Angelique didn't care about the change in title, but nodded quickly. Once, something happened that almost annihilated his soul. His most primordial will has turned into countless stardust and scattered throughout space-time. Miss Maid said, You mean, the master is just one part of it? Don't be nervous. This is different from what you think. Angelique shook her head. The will represents all his memories. His memories are scattered in time and space. After the destruction of the origin, I have been wandering in time and space to collect his memory fragments. As for his appearance in this era, it originated from my father's words. Master, listen, there's only one thing you need to do. Princess Angelique's face suddenly changed slightly. That is to stay by his side and not let him feel any pain. Try not to let him remember what happened in the past. Please be clear. Miss Maid showed a serious expression. I can't say. Angelique took a deep breath and said, The origin has found me. Even if I have told you these words now, it's still dangerous for you. Do you feel it? The rolling of the Nirvana River. Miss Maid's eyes moved slightly. The shop that she was standing in, which had been magnified hundreds of times, had begun to collapse. Please be clear. Miss Maid said again. At this time, her voice was heavier. Think about why he is the one who got all this. Angelique said in a low voice, When you know clearly what he has suffered, you will understand. Sorry, the power of the origin is too strong. After all, I'm not the complete glorious son. Sorry. The Nirvana River collapsed. Princess Angelique, in the cockpit of Alpha, Renina looked anxious. She knew how dangerous it was to enter the Nirvana plane, but she couldn't intervene in this battle. The only thing she could do was to guard by the side. I hope His Highness Desolation won't make trouble at this time. Renina murmured as if she was praying. But at this moment, a voice that almost made her heart jump out of her chest sounded from the bottom of her heart. Is that His Highness, desolate, still causing trouble? Renina suddenly opened her eyes, and the cockpit of Alpha opened at this moment. The girl crawled out weakly. Your Highness Crown Prince, looking at the girl with hazy eyes, Boss Luo asked softly, have I ever sat on Alpha? End of this chapter. Chapter 23:51. Longing was a kind of feeling that could be felt at a glance. How much, how long, and how deep the longing was, the eyes wouldn't lie. But Luocio was quite unfamiliar with this kind of longing. But this didn't hinder him from observing the soul state. It was like picking up a special clip-on magnifying glass for gem collectors. He was observing its changes. He believed that the souls from ancient times would only peel off its most original brilliance little by little under the washing of time. No, no. The girl's eyes were full of longing. I didn't let you sit on Alpha even once. You, come in now. Boss Luo shook his head and said softly, they are back. They. Nina showed a slightly disappointed expression, then she looked thoughtfully at the direction where Princess Angelique and Miss Maid were confronting each other. Back. These two people had returned from the other side. Princess Angelique, did she do what she wanted to do? Nina subconsciously looked at Luocio with a touch of anxiety on her face. You? Can you not blame Her Royal Highness? Boss Luo just looked at the girl and shook his head. Nina couldn't understand the meaning of this. He didn't deny it but shook his head as if he was sighing. Nina opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but a cube suddenly fell in front of her. They brought Angelique. She took a step forward to Boss Luo. I think you should come out. At the same time, another figure quietly came to Boss Luo's side. It was Miss Maid, who looked calm without any ripples. She was still holding the battle flag in her hand, and wearing a pure white spiritual suit. Boss Luo smiled slightly. No need for the weapon. As for the clothes, they look good. Miss Maid's eyes softened. The battle flag disappeared, but the spiritual suit was still there. She said softly, Master, Miss Angelique said something strange when she was at the other side. Angelique's expression changed slightly. He had just asked her to keep it a secret, but she turned around and wanted to confess everything. It's fine as long as you know. Boss Luo shook his head slightly. It doesn't matter if you tell me or hide it from me. I believe you. I believe you unconditionally. The servant girl's lips moved slightly, and her words finally turned into endless gentleness, blooming in her blue eyes. Angelique couldn't help but frown. She suddenly felt a little sour in her heart. After a cold snort, Angelique said indifferently, I didn't come here to watch you guys whisper sweet nothings to each other. What you want isn't here. Boss Luo suddenly shook his head. Angelique was stunned. Her face turned gloomy as she muttered, Do you know what I want? Boss Luo nodded and opened his palm. On his palm, a vertical gold and silver card was rotating slowly. Angelique's eyes suddenly brightened. She seemed to be unable to restrain herself. Her body moved forward, but she quickly stopped. She heaved a heavy sigh. So, you've already taken it. This isn't it. Boss Luo shook his head and said, I got this card before. Angelique said subconsciously, then the one here. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, Kingdom of Heaven wasn't given out by me. I think it should be the previous store manager. How could he? Princess Angelique's expression changed slightly. Boss Luo smiled indifferently. Why not? He was also the manager of the store. If I can do it, he can do it too, right? Angelique said disdainfully, Humph, at least I can kill him. Boss Luo didn't comment. The question of whether the royal force could really kill the source agent had always been a concept. He had never really seen it. He couldn't let Angelique find the previous boss and kill him once to prove it. He kept the gold and silver card in his hand. He actually had more than one, but he hadn't encountered any clues about this kind of gold and silver card for a long time. What's the use of this kind of card? Boss Luo couldn't help but ask curiously. Angelique frowned and said, "You don't know?" Boss Luo said without embarrassment, "Information is too expensive. I think I'll ask the right person sooner or later, so I'm not in a hurry." Was it because he was stingy? Princess Angelique was both amused and gratified. She said softly, "You're right to use less source." But the reality was that Boss Luo had been spending a lot recently. He even followed the long river of time and talked to the former boss in the torrent of time. "You don't have to use source for the card," Angelique suddenly said. "I'll investigate this matter. When I figure it out, I'll give you an answer." Boss Luo said, "Then, what do you want to use this information to get?" Princess Angelique said indifferently, "I don't need you to give me anything. There's no need to try this. Source can't do business with me. It doesn't dare to take my soul. I don't need a reason to give you anything," but at this moment, Princess Angelique's face changed slightly. Renina even showed a look of fear. Because, at this moment, the shadow of a door appeared behind Boss Luo. The door looked like it was about to open. Only a gap was revealed. Even someone as powerful as Angelique couldn't help but show a touch of paleness. Her Royal Highness's eyes were solemn. A golden mark quietly appeared on her forehead. But the shadow of the door seemed to be more solid at this moment. Her Royal Highness's body had become extremely heavy. But she gritted her teeth, and the cube of Laplace instantly hovered. But at this moment Boss Luo waved his hand, looked sideways behind him, and said indifferently, "I didn't ask you to come out. Be quiet." It was like a rusty gear turning. The illusory image of the door, the slit that had been opened, slowly closed as if it was unwilling to give up. The tight door faded away bit by bit until it finally disappeared. At this moment, Lenina seemed to have lost all her strength and sat down in the cockpit, gasping for air. Princess Angelique looked surprised and doubtful. She looked at Luochio in disbelief. You can control it? Or is this a deeper level of fusion?" Boss Luo was silent for a while. "This is not control, fusion doesn't count. This is probably a kind of compromise." "You threatened it?" Angelique showed an even more incredulous expression. She was stunned for a while, then suddenly laughed. "You actually threatened it. You're really something." Boss Luo said expressionlessly, "This shouldn't be something to be happy about. For you." Princess Angelique chuckled, "But for me, it's not. Do you know, this is the best news I've heard in hundreds of Void Era?" Boss Luo looked up at the white clouds at this time. The white clouds broke at this time, and a huge figure was falling rapidly. It was the second battle equipment, a curlet. At the same time, a grayish-white snake was wrapped around Curlet's body. Curlet's hands were holding the snake's body. Although it was falling, the snake was obviously very uncomfortable and was hissing angrily. Finally, the gray snake was unable to continue and was directly pushed away by Curlet. In the cockpit, the ponytailed girl was about to directly cut the grayish-white snake, but she was stunned. "Your Highness! Your Highness!" But just as Meshi was slightly distracted, the grayish-white snake had slipped away from Curlet's hands. The snake swam in the sky and quickly returned to the side of a gorgeous woman. The woman slowly landed and finally appeared in front of Boss Luo and Miss Maid. The gorgeous woman laughed softly. "It's the first time we meet under such circumstances, it's really rude. So, are you my new master?" Miss Maid's eyes suddenly sharpened, with a sense of majesty. Cleopatra. This was a very difficult black soul envoy, especially in seducing men. "Hello, Miss Yuyi." The gorgeous woman narrowed her eyes. "Did I give you a holiday? You still have one term left." Miss Maid said indifferently, "Master, this is Cleopatra, the guardian of the Kingdom of Heaven contract, 2 terms." At this time, Boss Luo was curiously looking at the gorgeous woman surrounded by the snake. It was undeniable that this was a woman who revealed the temptation of primitive impulses everywhere. Cleopatra, this woman's temptation was even stronger than Lily. Hello, Miss Cleopatra. The strong temptation didn't cause any waves in Boss Luo's heart. The characteristics of the Black Soul envoy had been determined long ago. The envoy couldn't have any overstepping on the store manager. It's a very easygoing new master. Cleopatra's smile became wider, and she even licked her lips at a very fast speed. This is much more interesting than the previous one. Miss Maid said indifferently, Cleopatra, you should be guarding the Garden of Eden. Cleopatra smiled and said, it's very safe there. Besides, the kingdom of holy light is also a part of the kingdom of heaven. I'm not being lazy. It's none of your business here. Miss Maid said expressionlessly, the master didn't summon you. However, since you've already seen him, you can go back. Cleopatra moved closer and said with a smile, I can go back. You can already represent the master fully. Miss Maid didn't say anything, just stared at Cleopatra's eyes expressionlessly. This gorgeous woman, after a short look, quickly chuckled and said, of course, even if it doesn't represent, I'll still obey. After all, you're the keeper of the Ark of the Covenant. Then, I'll leave now. My new master, Cleopatra's everything is already yours. She slowly disappeared, bringing along her serpent with her, but before she left, she glanced at Lot. The little girl inside, I'll play with you next time. In Kurlet, Meshi slowly exhaled. She didn't think that the Black Soul envoy could be so difficult to deal with. This was definitely a Black Soul of the origin level. However, Cleopatra, she didn't have any impression of this name. But this wasn't important to Meshi at this time. What was important was that he was in front of her, but unlike Renina, Meshi didn't directly open the door of the cockpit. Just like what Renina said, she had a restrained and conservative character. After all, her hands were on the control ball. It was just her fingers. Even if it was just a thought, the door of the cockpit could be opened. Kurlet moved and slowly came to Angelique's side. Your Highness, I'm sorry. The mission was blocked. I couldn't receive the Holy Light Kingdom in time. Angelique said indifferently, this mission was destined to fail, don't worry. Besides, I've already gotten something more precious than success. Meshi thought and subconsciously looked in the direction of Boss Luo. Although she restrained herself and didn't open the door, from now on, she wouldn't move her eyes away. Take one more look at him. This is the most precious encounter you have ever had. Are you okay, Your Highness? Boss Luo suddenly said, are you leaving? In the sky, Princess Angelique, Meshi, and Renina were all silent at this time. After a while, Princess Angelique said slowly, I can't stay in this time and space for too long. I still have things to do. Besides, I still have the investigation that I promised you. Unless you force me to stay. But if you force me to stay, you have to be prepared for the battle of destiny. You should know that you want to kill me. Boss Luo seemed to be quite helpless. Actually, I prefer you to keep me. Princess Angelique sighed faintly. Boss Luo said seriously, I'll send you off. Angelique took a deep breath and gritted her teeth. I won't be satisfied with just this. I'm not that generous. Finally, the characteristic of Dark Moon is invisibility. You have to be careful of famine. Although he can't hurt you, he can definitely do something to disgust you. She was the first to leave. At the moment of leaving, her voice quietly sounded in the servant girl's ear. Partner candidate, remember what I said? Also, you're just a candidate. If you're not good, I'll pull you down. Tisk, Angelique disappeared. She left by herself. Boss Luo didn't have time to send her away. After that, it was Meshi and Renina. Next time, if you still want to come up, I'll let you come up. In Alpha, Renina whispered, I've grown up. Boss Luo just blinked. Kaolot, on the other hand, was different. It was such a big mech, yet it saluted in a standard manner. Only then did the voice of the girl with a single ponytail come out. Then, please allow me to take my leave. Let me see you one last time. ######PS. As usual. Chapter 23:52. There was no trace of their departure. Not only Princess Angelique and the other two, but even President Ballum left almost at the same time. Even Lily was taken away. Boss Luo didn't stop Lily from being taken away. He had already fulfilled his promise to Lily. As the saying went, the goods and the money were cleared. The next time they met, if there was a need, the business could continue. Luocio stood on the white cloud for some time. Actually, the problem of the Holy Light Kingdom didn't end with the departure of Angelique and the other two. Angelique was also someone who had the power to mess up fate. Her appearance here was more like an intervention after a precise calculation. Fate was guiding her actions. This encounter with her, from the moment Balaam, the Great Old One, was captured by the Angel Corps and thrown into the Holy Light Kingdom, it was already considered a first. "Master, can't Miss Angelique stay in this space-time?" Miss Maid asked softly. She knew that Luocio had pondered for a long time. He would hope that someone could talk to him at this moment. "It's a lie that she can't stay. She just can't always appear in front of me." Boss Luo shook his head and said, "This page has already explained it clearly." The original copy of the Book of Gaia in his hand slowly flipped open. It happened to be the chapter about Princess Angelique's birthday in the Holy Land Page World. Miss Maid was deep in thought. When we were on the other side, Miss Angelique said, "It's better to let her say it to me personally." Boss Luo shook his head. "This way, I can have some expectations for the next meeting. With this expectation, fate can arrange it." "Then, have you made a decision?" Miss Maid asked seriously. "The Holy Light Kingdom, the Kingdom of Heaven." Boss Luo didn't give a direct answer. He just looked at the white cloud and suddenly asked, "Yu Yi, do you think they will be happy living here, when they know that their final fate is to be sent out like food?" Miss Maid said indifferently, "Then don't let them know that they were happy before they disappeared. That's what they were. Originally, they had already died once when they were in the subworld. In fact, believers in the Holy Light Kingdom had already been reborn. Many excellent believers could even reincarnate and live a few more lives." Then, Boss Luo seemed to have made up his mind. He said softly, "Let's do a thorough cleaning." Boss Luo put on the fox mask again. At the same time, a black windbreaker appeared on his body. He looked at Miss Maid and chuckled. "Don't you think I look like a bad guy now?" "Phew," Legel let out a long sigh and stopped. It wasn't because the abnormality in the Kingdom of Heaven had subsided, but because he had been typing for too long and his leg was cramping. Finally, little Madanzo wiped her cold sweat and collapsed on the ground. Based on the calculation of hundreds of millions of believers per second, it was obviously not enough to rely on Nan Xiaonan, the false believer. Madanzo sacrificed a lot of her pitiful origin. Of course, the most important thing was the timely appearance of Michael. Without the light of the Kingdom of Heaven's Grand Monarch to illuminate the entire Holy Light Kingdom and stabilize the hundreds of millions of believers in the kingdom, Legel and Madanzo might not be able to do it. "Is it over?" Nan Xiaonan sat down as if she was about to collapse. She raised the binoculars again, intending to look at Miss Maid's direction. However, the camera swept back and forth in the sky for a long time, but it couldn't find Miss Maid's figure. However, the believers in the City of Freedom who were affected by the Destiny system during the Saints' resurrection ceremony had regained consciousness. The believers in the City of Freedom were continuously drained of their faith. At this time, most of the believers were extremely weak. However, the entire City of Freedom was paralyzed, and it was obviously impossible to rescue them. What happened just now, I don't know. I seem to have seen the saint resurrected. Saint, where is the saint? People subconsciously looked at the venue of the Holy Maiden ceremony. Those black crosses had disappeared, but the sky was still gloomy and gray. Clusters of dark clouds seemed to be dispersing, but they stopped and spread unevenly in the sky. My destiny can't open," someone cried out in alarm. Then, screams sounded one after another. People realized that the destiny system was almost paralyzed at this time. People who were already used to the destiny system's vision looked at the world strangely. It was as if the glass of the window was removed, and they could see more clearly. However, at the same time, they felt more uneasy. No one knew where this uneasiness came from. Most people couldn't understand the paralysis of the destiny system at this time. Essex was mixed in the crowd at this time, together with Lily, Isha, and Celine. After they left the venue, they were thrown on the street. It seemed that Miss Yi disliked them. People fell into hesitation because of the paralysis of the destiny system. Essex felt relieved at this time. If the destiny system existed, there was almost no way for him to hide his identity as a vampire. The legendary heresy of vampires was not something that could be solved by simply being exiled to a sinful place, right? He would have to be burned at the stake, right? It seems that it's not over yet. Right at this moment, Isha's cry of alarm caused Arthashis' heart to skip a beat. "Look!" Isha suddenly pointed in the direction of the Holy Maiden ceremony. "What's that?" Mr. Essex was stunned. "A guy wearing a fox mask?" "Boss Essex, be careful!" Lily screamed at this time. Arthashis subconsciously looked behind him, only to see that the people behind him had suddenly scattered backwards in fear. In the empty space, a man was currently howling in pain. Furthermore, he was madly tearing apart his clothes and even his skin. The man quickly tore himself into a bloody mess. Cracks appeared on his body, and within those cracks, there seemed to be a pale white yet scorching aura flowing. The terrible heat steam was now emitting from the man's body. Mr. Essex couldn't help but be shocked. At this time, the man's body began to mutate. His body split in an instant, and then turned into a strange creature more than 2 meters tall. Its limbs were twisted and reversed, and there were long horns on its head like a black goat. Its nostrils were breathing out hot breath. "It's those guys in the village." Essex couldn't help but shiver. He had seen this kind of thing. In his experience in Dong Remy village, he had encountered this kind of thing. Cries of agony rang out one after another, signifying the appearance of mutants. If it was said that people's will was uncontrollable during the saint's crucifixion ceremony, and the scene was strange and mysterious, then at this time, it was terrifying, and people were panicking. The mutated people unscrupulously grabbed people and tore them apart like wild beasts that hadn't eaten for a long time. "What is this?" Isha couldn't help but frown, and her voice was slightly trembling. "I can't explain it clearly." Mr. Essex bit at this time. With his vampire's strength, he easily sent a mutated person who pounced on him flying, but obviously, not everyone can mutate, only some of them. "What do you want to do?" Isha hurriedly asked Essex. This greasy middle-aged man, who didn't do his job, actually directly spread his sinful vampire wings and directly flew to the street. Essex didn't answer Isha's question. Instead, he took a deep breath, and his voice pierced through the entire street. "Those who didn't mutate, can hear my voice, can see me, come to me. I will provide you with protection. I'm Essex, the owner of Rose Mansion, the last descendant of the saint's father family." They instinctively looked in the direction of the voice, and after a slight hesitation, they hurriedly rushed to Essex. Compared to those mutants who had mutated into monsters and attacked everyone they saw, although Arthashis looked more like a vampire described in the legends like Sheena, it was still acceptable. This seemed to be the only hope they could see since they couldn't mutate. Isha looked at Essex with a complicated expression. Since young, this guy always thought with his muscles, and it seemed that he could never learn to be smarter. Lily, come and help." Okay." The little maid from the Rose Mansion hurriedly replied. She had been embraced by Mr. Essex and was also a vampire. It was just that she hadn't been born for a long time, so she wasn't very familiar with her powers. However, she was barely able to provide support. However, there were simply too many people who had mutated. Just relying on Arthas and Chris alone, they were unable to resist. Moreover, the tide of people who were fleeing in their direction was gradually surging violently. Arthashes, go to my apartment! Isha shouted at the top of her lungs. Arthashes, who had just punched a mutant away, took the time to turn around. I know you're rich, but how many people can your villa with a few hundred square meters? Isha said. That villa area is my property. Who asked you to use the villa as a defense? I'm talking about the entire villa area. Those high walls can be used as a defense. Do you want to rely on yourself to resist so many mutated people? At this time, organizing everyone to resist together is the most effective way. Mr. Essex thought about his rose mansion that was about to close down and squeezed out a voice after a while. How much money do you have? Don't talk nonsense. Isha quickly said. I'll try to contact the property management of the villa area and see if I can organize the survivors as soon as possible. You go first, don't try to save people whenever you see them, you can't save them all. I don't think you're that hot-blooded. The door of Rose Mansion was forcefully pushed open. The effect of the anesthetic on the girl's body seemed to be fading. Obviously, the world outside of Rose Mansion was not the scenery of Dong Remy village that she was familiar with. There were many skyscrapers here, and this place was hundreds of times bigger than the village. There were some sceneries here that she had never seen before. Like a little elf, the chubby little guy was lying on the girl's shoulder at this time. The girl strenuously walked out. Her body was gradually recovering its strength. In her arms, she was holding a rusty iron sword. This was found in the Rose Mansion's utility room. But at this time, a figure suddenly pounced on her. The girl instinctively dodged this sudden attack. When she saw the guy pouncing on her, the girl's eyes changed. It's the Burgundian cavalry. But when she saw the other person slowly turn around, the girl quickly had a new understanding. No, it's a guy like the Burgundian cavalry. In the village, there were people who turned into monsters like this. In this huge city, there were also people like this. She wanted to swing her sword to fight back, but the feeling of numbness in her body had not completely disappeared. The girl struggled bitterly for a few times before she was directly pressed to the ground. I'm just a fake. Is this kind of battle necessary? Even if I die, it's just that, at the moment of death, the girl was in a daze. She clearly saw the mutated gaze. At this time, a small figure blocked in front of her. It was the little elf. But such a small body could not resist the mutated enemy. The little elf was instantly sent flying, and the mutated creature once again stretched out its sharp claws to the girl. This time, the girl's eyes regained their brightness. She gritted her teeth and took the initiative to stretch out her arm, sending it into the mutated creature's mouth. The moment the sharp teeth pierced her arm, the intense pain was reduced by a lot because of the numbness in her body. The girl seized this only opportunity and used all the strength in her body to directly pierce the mutated creature's abdomen with the rusty iron sword in her hand. Both of them fell at the same time. The girl looked blankly at the gloomy sky of the free city. After a long time, the girl pushed the mutated creature away forcefully. She used the rusty iron sword to support her body and slowly climbed up. The wound on her arm was still bleeding on the iron sword. The rusty places where the blood flowed through flashed a bright light. The girl stared at the rusty sword in her hand in a daze. This sword is the same as the one I pulled out at that time? The gray-faced elf flew over unsteadily at this moment. The light from the iron sword began to circulate into the young girl Jahan's body. The wound on her arm began to heal quickly, and the numbness in her body disappeared quickly. Her physical strength was increasing crazily. She was like the time when she pulled out the divine sword. She was supported by divine power. Are you okay? The young girl let out a sigh of relief. She stretched out her hand and caught the little elf steadily. Lord me or hashtag 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 PS. 2/5, end of this chapter. Chapter 23:53. More than 6 hours had passed, and the City of Freedom was filled with mutated humans. The city was experiencing an unimaginable disaster. No one knew why these people mutated, and the remaining people could only instinctively resist. However, since the birth of the Holy Light Kingdom, they had never experienced such a terrifying battle. They were so weak when resisting the mutated humans. Some people sat on the streets in a daze. Some people's eyes were lifeless as if they had lost consciousness, and their bodies were bitten by the violent mutated humans. Some people hid in a corner and clenched their fists, placing all their hopes on praying, even though the destiny system wasn't activated at all. Quick, quick. I heard that the villa area on the hillside has a defense area. Quick, quick, go there. There were also some people who were unwilling to die in the hands of the mutants without any value. When the disaster came, the resistance that was deeply buried because of faith and a peaceful life quietly awakened. They didn't know what kind of feeling it was, but it was innate. They didn't need anyone to teach them, they only needed to pick up the tools that could cause harm to know how to do it. 8 hours, 12 hours, an entire day had passed. Still can't restart the destiny system, Legel? After the incident, Madanzo and Legel stayed in a residential building for a whole day. They imagined that the mutation of the believers was related to the shutdown of the destiny system. Kill the mutated humans one by one? This would take too long. There were hundreds of millions of believers in the Holy Light Kingdom, and if they wanted to eliminate the mutated humans in a short period of time, they would have to launch a large-scale destructive attack at all costs or directly open the Holy Light Kingdom to the Angel Legion. The Angel Legion in the Kingdom of Heaven could be as many as they wanted, and those low-level angels were born with willpower, and there were hundreds of millions of them. If they summoned the Angel Legion, they would be able to eliminate the mutated humans in a short period of time. Originally, Madanzo and Legel wanted to summon the Angel Legion, and they immediately contacted Michael and asked this archangel to give orders to the Angel Legion. However, they didn't expect that Holy Light Dodo had completely shut down. No, we've tried everything, unless we can get the final key from Joan of Arc. Legel shook his head dejectedly. Whether or not we can get it is another matter. Finding her now is also a problem. Little Madanzo's pacifier was about to break from biting it. He stared at Nan Xiaonan with his dead fish eyes. I suspect that boss is behind this, but I don't have any evidence. The great Madanzo. If you don't have any evidence, what are you talking about? Madanzo, you are light, you are electricity, you are the only idiot. I love you to death. You mother ***. Madanzo could not help but feel a headache. Then, she looked at the sofa beside her. At this moment, there was a mutant lying on the sofa. This mutant was the owner of this house. At this moment, he had completely lost consciousness. If he wanted to solve the problem of mutation, he had to first understand the cause of mutation. If he couldn't do it through the destiny system, then he had to do it through the mutation's body. There's news about Michael. Legel was slightly happy at this moment. He is organizing a temporary army to clean up the mutants. They should be able to reach the Free City soon. Madanzo could not help but frown. She subconsciously said, "How can there be a regular army in the Holy Light Kingdom?" Legel bitterly smiled. Michael is bestowing his power. He is crazily bestowing his power to the believers of the Blazing Sky City. Although there is no way to reach the level of a regular angel army, it is enough to deal with the mutants. Madanzo subconsciously asked, "How much is the temporary army?" 1 million. Legel took a deep breath and said, "And the number is still increasing." 1 million? Madanzo jumped up in disbelief. That guy doesn't want to live anymore? How can he recover from such a loss? It can't be helped. Legel sighed. It's not only the Free City that has mutants. The entire Holy Light Kingdom has mutated on a large scale. Even if there is a temporary army of 1 million, it is still not enough for the 7 capitals. Madanzo shook her head. It's not that it's not enough. Although these mutants are crazy, they are not strong. There is no need for 1 million. Even if there are 100,000 with divine power, we can still clean them up. It's just that there is not enough time. In just a moment, more people will die in the hands of the mutants. Legel said faintly, yes, there is indeed not enough time. No matter how many troops there is still not enough time. After saying that, Lacour heaved a sigh of relief and stood up. What are you going to do? Madanzo slightly frowned. The destiny system can't be restarted, Legel said seriously. I've already wasted an entire day on the destiny system. Do you also want to? Legel smiled faintly. Metatron, why can't I do what Michael can do? I am also a blazing angel of the Holy Light Kingdom. I may not be able to do 1 million divine power, but I can still do 100 to 200,000. After saying that, the owner of the second day palace opened her wings and appeared outside the building. Madanzo opened her mouth slightly and silently looked at Legel's shadow. If I can also have a believer, Nan Xiaonan could not help but blink at this time. Is it my fault? Suddenly, Madanzo sighed and stared at Nan Xiaonan. Newcomer. I know. I have already put in a lot of effort. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously said, Ah, Madanzo, I praise you. You are. My consciousness is going to dive into the depths of the destiny system. Madanzo suddenly interrupted her and then smiled slightly. The next time we meet, I may be Metatron. You are willing. Nan Xiaonan could not help but be silent. She did not know if others could understand Madanzo's feelings at this time, but she knew that she was also another will that was independent from the main body. Originally, there should not be any thoughts of independence, but the longer the separation from the main body, the separated body would naturally produce a new personality. Madanzo had experienced too many things in the Book of Gaia. At this time, she probably no longer just wanted to enter the Book of Gaia casually to take a look. Even her thoughts were different from Metatron's. What are you talking about? Madanzo smiled faintly. There is only opportunity when there is danger. Maybe this time I can gain a large wave of faith, and then the king will return and destroy the world. Nan Xiaonan said in a bad mood, My boss is afraid that you will die from a slap. If he wanted to slap me, he would have done it long ago. Madanzo shook her head. Well, you don't have to pray anymore. Fake believer, you are free. Nan Xiaonan saw with her own eyes that little Madanzo disappeared in front of her at this time. She left just like that. She whispered something in a low voice. After a while, Nan Xiaonan kicked the mutant on the sofa away. She collapsed on the sofa and looked at the ceiling blankly. It was chaotic outside. The whole Free City was chaotic, like a city of crime full of thugs. Suddenly, Nan Xiaonan reached into her pocket and took out a booklet. This was given by little Madanzo, and it was full of praise quote. Madanzo didn't think about how much faith Nan Xiaonan could provide, so she didn't bother to write a prayer and just gave these praises. Anyway, she just recited them. Nan Xiaonan was an immortal soul with an unusually rich experience, and her soul power was extraordinarily high. Even if the praises were a bit perfunctory, it still had some effect. Motherf *Ker, how did you come up with such a narcissistic hymn? It's not disgusting. Nan Xiaonan muttered and scratched her head in annoyance. I don't care. I will only recite it once. With that, Nan Xiaonan took a deep breath. She put the booklet on the table and spread it flat. Then, she put her hands together and half knelt on the ground. Don't die. Senior. Free City, in the villa area halfway up the mountain. In just one day, people used wooden planks and doors to reinforce the outer walls of the villa area and organized a patrol team. All of this was thanks to Isha's family's huge manpower and financial resources. Why does this villa area feel like there are so many unnecessary defensive facilities? Essex was currently wandering around the periphery of the villa area, constantly blocking the invading mutants and helping the normal people who came to seek shelter to open a path. Not only him, Isha and Lily were also doing the same. Unlike him and Lily, who were wandering on the ground, Isha directly activated a helicopter. She sat in the helicopter and carried a 98K. This is the main building area that has not fallen for hundreds of years. Isn't it normal to have some defensive facilities? Isha calmly replied. That's not normal, right? Essex couldn't help but complain. Forget about the defensive facilities in the villa area. What's with these weapons? If you secretly possess firearms, you will be sent to the fire execution platform, okay? Don't talk nonsense. There's a group of survivors coming from 3:00. I'll cover you. Go pick them up. Asash's eyes flashed red. He gritted his teeth, spread his wings, and quickly rushed in the direction of the survivors. Hold on a little longer. Hold on a little longer. Essex, this is not the time for you to be hungry. Greasy, Rose Countess muttered at this time. Essex? Have you forgotten? You're a real man who can endure for 3 days with a packet of instant noodles. This little bit of hunger is nothing. Hold on a little longer. Saint, before I degenerate into a demon, please let me save more people. Freedom City, Holy Maiden Conference Hall, on the Dome. Boss Luo was watching the spread of the flames of war. Not only Freedom City, but the entire Holy Light Kingdom was facing the same situation. A screen appeared in front of him. There were 2 columns of data. One column was the number of mutants, and the other column was the number of non-mutants. The number of mutants on both sides was decreasing rapidly. Boss Luo seemed to be thinking about something. Soon, his finger lightly swiped on the screen. Then, the 3rd column of data appeared on the screen. The number was changing. The number of non-mutants decreased. The 3rd column of data would increase by that amount. The total number of mutants was unchanged. Perhaps this is the cruelest thing. Boss Luo said softly, everything between life and death, to me, is as simple as a game of addition and subtraction. There was only one listener here, Miss Servant Girl. She gently placed her palm on the back of Boss Luo's hand. Actually, let me do it. Luochu shook his head and said, I have to experience it myself. In the past, I was afraid that I couldn't bear it. Now, I realize that it's not as difficult as I imagined. I don't even feel it at all. Miss Servant Girl seemed to want to say something. Boss Luo suddenly said, there are many places like the Kingdom of Heaven. Master? Boss Luo smiled and said, do you think that I will become a butcher? Demon King sounds better. Miss Servant Girl just grabbed his hand and placed it on her cheek. She closed her eyes and gently rubbed his palm. If you are the Demon King, then I will become your witch. What about the Demon King? Luochu looked at the sky and muttered to himself. Then, do something that only the Demon King would do. Do you want to see him? Miss Servant Girl opened her eyes subconsciously. I'll bring him here. Boss Luo chuckled. After all, we have to ask for the customer's opinion, right? The sound of fingers snapping was heard. On top of the dome of the Holy Maiden ceremony, a handsome man with a bushy beard suddenly appeared. He was dressed in a coarse linen robe. The man closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the ground. The moment the man opened his eyes, a hint of shock flashed in his eyes. However, when the man saw a person wearing a fox mask appear in front of him, he seemed to have understood everything. Boss Luo walked to the man. I'm sorry to invite you here. Don't worry, I'll send you back to where you came from. The man was silent for a while before he slowly said, I'm with your ex-husband right now. He might be shocked, but he might not be. Boss Luo asked curiously, what are you doing? He said he's waiting for someone. Boss Luo thought for a while. before explaining your intention, can you answer my question? Him looked at Miss Servant Girl, who was half a step behind Boss Luo, thought for a while and said, I didn't mean to kill Medellin, but I knew it would happen. As for handing you over, it was my idea. Miss Servant Girl's shoulders trembled slightly, but she still maintained the most basic smile on her face. Him said again, but before I gave the order, it was your ex-husband who wanted to take you away. He almost wouldn't do such a thing, but that time it was really beyond my expectation. Why? Miss Servant Girl asked in a low voice. Him shook his head. I asked him this question, and the answer he gave wasn't very ideal. He just said that this was what Nero said. I'm also very curious about who Nero is. Nero. End of chapter. Chapter 23:54. Generally speaking, there would be many interlocking questions, but the complicated relationship between the two parties couldn't be solved by simple questions and simple answers. Miss Maid already knew the whole story. As long as she knew the answer, it would be enough. Why didn't he resist? Ask he if he regretted it? And so on. What a joke. She was a maid of the shop. Why did she have to carry the anger of the past until now? She was also not the type who would make things difficult for herself and make things difficult for herself after being betrayed or abandoned. As for forgiveness, there was no such thing as forgiveness. Since she became the soul of the shop, even if she looked at the kingdom of heaven, she would look at other customers. But she knew that as long as she showed a little sadness, her master would overturn the decision he had made for her. You can, Boss Luo said softly. Miss Maid shook her head gently. She walked past Luocio and stopped in front of he. Her calm blue eyes looked into his deep eyes. You can. He said indifferently, it's not that I didn't consider your idea. I was also prepared to accept it. Miss Maid suddenly smiled. Elohim? Adonai? Or Iller? How should I call you? He shook his head. They are all me. It doesn't matter what you call them. It's just a name. Since you don't call me Father anymore, then I know what you have chosen. Elohim, then. Miss Maid said indifferently, it's not what I have chosen, but what I will do now. I don't want to change the current model of the kingdom of heaven. He was surprised but not surprised. He just sighed softly. Miss Maid said indifferently, there's nothing wrong with leaving the kingdom of heaven to provide high-quality souls for my master. On the contrary, if I shut it down, I need to waste time to build a mature system. He said, they used to believe in you like that. Miss Maid said, they also believe in you more than that. He was silent for a while and whispered, you have to enter the narrow door. Because to lead to death, the door is wide, the road is wide, and many people enter. To lead to immortality, the door is narrow, and the road is small, the fewer people who find it. I'm standing in the door of eternal life, Miss Maid suddenly said. You already have a better home. He smiled. As for me, I'll still search in the void. I've stopped for too long, and I've almost forgotten what the primordial one's voice sounded like. When Ahi said these words, Ahi's body seemed to have dimmed a little. Something was slowly being expelled from his body. This made Ahi very weak in an instant. He became weak, but his spirit became stronger. After realizing the meaning of his action, Miss Maid couldn't help but frown. Elohim, what are you? He smiled indifferently and said, no matter what you choose, I have already made my choice. I couldn't reject the owner of the shop, just like how I couldn't reject the previous owner's request. There's only 1.5 positions here, and I've already given the other half to John. 2 balls of milky white light slowly floated from his hands to Boss Luo's hands. He said calmly, I think you won't refuse. It's better to be pure. Please let the kingdom of heaven be pure. Boss Luo shook his head and said, it's the same. There will be a time limit. He recited softly, love is enduring. Love is also never-ending. Love has no time limit. As long as there's one person who believes, The light of the Holy Spirit will not be extinguished. I think you won't want to see it extinguish. He said that you might be a guy who likes to be bright. Boss Luo pondered for a moment and nodded. Okay. He seemed to be relieved for a moment. He smiled and said, "You're more generous than the previous owner. We're after different things." Boss Luo didn't say yes or no. He immediately said, "But one Holy Spirit is enough. What about the other half?" He didn't care, as if what he gave was no longer important. Instead, he asked with some expectation, "If it's you, how do you plan to deal with it? Maybe, in your heart, you already have a candidate." "That will also be the candidate in your heart," Boss Luo said softly. "Is there anything else you want to say? I'm not leaving." He shook his head. His voice seemed to be spreading in all of his legends. He murmured, "I'm about to go on a long journey." There was no return date. His figure gradually faded and returned to where he was originally. The surroundings became peaceful because of this. After a long time, Boss Luo held up 1.5 positions in his hand and said faintly, "He has become pure. Pure. In the beginning, the one who wandered in the void and wanted to find primordial, and didn't stop him." "Yes," Miss Maid responded softly. "He who completed the separation in front of her and her master. It was like throwing away a pair of worn-out clothes or a pair of worn-out shoes without any hesitation. It seemed easy, but what it gave up was enough power to dominate the void and countless legends." Boss Luo took off his mask at this time. Before it could appear, it had already been removed. Boss Luo said with a little pity, "It seems that I can't be a bad guy this time." With that said, Boss Luo slowly threw out the other half of the position in his hand, except for Holy Spirit. This was half of the Holy Sun position. After throwing out half of the Holy Sun position, it disappeared in the air in an instant. At this time, Boss Luo stretched out his hand to Miss Maid and said softly, "Come, before we plant it, let's take a few more looks." The Holy Spirit position in his hand was pure and flawless. Chaos, fragmentation, the information was like an ocean, so dense that it was difficult to pass through. This was the inside of the destiny system, which was full of holes. Because destiny was dead, the whole system was disordered at this time. The small church was now floating in this chaotic ocean. Floating and sinking, the church began to be annihilated little by little. It only had a small piece of land left, even the top of the church had disappeared. In the small church there was a statue with 36 wings. Each of the 36 wings was filled with eyes. At this moment, an 11 or 12-year-old child was being tied up. The withered thorns completely entangled the child's body. It lowered its head, but its face was peaceful. "Hey!" A childish voice rang in its ears. It was touched and slowly raised its head, only to see a pair of very young hands climbing up from the edge of the church that was less than half destroyed. It was too strenuous for a half-year-old baby. God knew how it climbed up, little Madanzo. "Why are you here?" Metatron opened its mouth in surprise. "Didn't you find Legel? If I didn't come, the Holy Light Kingdom wouldn't be saved." Madanzo finally gritted its teeth and successfully climbed up the floor. Then, it staggered to the statue covered with thorns. "Don't talk nonsense. I'll save you. You won't regret it." Metatron's eyes flashed with a strange color. "I know you already have an independent. You're King talkative." Madanzo looked very fierce and said in a childish voice, "Don't talk. Listen to me. Now that destiny is dead and the system is completely paralyzed, let me make you the new core of the system. After that, you can control the system at will, and all the hundreds of millions of high-quality believers in the Holy Light Kingdom can enjoy at will. Isn't that nice?" Metatro's fair and tender hand grabbed the thorns and pulled with all his might. But it had no strength. After pulling for a long time, the thorns didn't budge at all. Metatron looked at Madanzo in a daze and asked curiously, "What have you been through recently? You're so annoying. Madanzo roared impatiently. Is it fun to chat with yourself? Anyway, in the end, I'll return to you, and you'll know everything. I'm afraid that the information will explode and make you orgasm. As I said, you really shouldn't have come. Metatron sighed at this moment, stupid other me. This is obviously a trap. The thorns wrapped around the statue waved in an instant, and little Madanzo was entangled by the thorns. Behind the statue, a guy in a grayish-black robe with a hood covering half of his face walked out slowly, the stealer of super level. It's you, Madanzo exclaimed. Although she was bound, she still yelled at Metatron, subconsciously. Why didn't you King tell me earlier? Didn't I send you the danger message? Madanzo said indignantly. How would I know that you're so useless that you were caught by this guy? You're so annoying. How can you talk like that? The stealer sighed slowly. I've taken a huge risk to wait here. Jean d'Arc, it's super scary. Madanzo rolled her eyes and said in exasperation, You know that she's scary, but you still want to be a demon. You're such a brainless guy with big boobs. Did she make you stupid? No, how did you get out of the cloister? Since it can be drawn, it can be erased. The stealer chuckled and walked over slowly. It's really difficult. Both Metatrons are so cute. I want both of them. You King Saint Bitch. Little Madanzo cursed. Yes, you're indeed a saint bitch. Metatron nodded in agreement. A thorns appeared in the stealer's hand, and she said with a smile, Disobedient children need to be punished. I don't like you anymore. In an instant, the vines seemed to have turned into terrifying venomous snakes as they lashed out at Metatro. She took one hit directly, and her face turned pale as if her body was almost shattered. She couldn't take such a hit a second time. The false believer Nan Xiaonan's faith was too weak. What are you trying to do? Madanzo frowned. The stealer cupped little Madanzo's face, and said softly while smoothing her brows, You're so cute. I can't bear to part with you. An irresistible force was slowly twisting Madanzo's neck. Seeing that her fragile neck was about to break, Madanzo was about to cry. Wait, if I kneel down and call for my mother now, do you think I still have a chance? Embarrassing. Metatron couldn't help but sigh in disdain. It's too late. The stealer chuckled. The one who's tied up has already called for it. Madanzo opened her mouth. Even though her neck was being twisted, her eyes were still fixed on Metatron. I want to strangle myself? What a crying child. The stealer's voice suddenly turned cold, and then she exerted force with both hands. This should have twisted Madanzo's head off. But at this moment, a bright light shone in the church that was about to break. At the same time, an arc of holy light struck the stealer. Boom! The small church that was already in ruins was instantly split into two halves. The stealer wasn't hurt, but her robe was torn apart. You're so annoying. I told you that I only have one robe. You're a bad child too, Mir. In the remaining church, a young man in white held little Madanzo in one hand with a solemn expression. Little Madanzo blinked her eyes. The archangel looked at the woman in front of her expressionlessly. It's really you, Maria. The stealer. She, who had revealed her true appearance, was as gentle as water. She put her palms together in front of her towering breasts and said in a low voice, me, good child, come into my arms. The archangel waved her hand, and the holy light in her hand gathered into a sword. Her 6 blazing wings spread out slowly. She blinked and tilted her head, asking, When did you realize it? The archangel said indifferently, I had an unforgettable experience. It made me feel helpless, and I almost disappeared. But it was during this period of time that I figured out something. Oh! She was even more curious. The archangel said, Previously, my origin was suddenly damaged, and I had no choice but to seek your treatment. But the result of the treatment was that although I regained my mobility, my origin was damaged even more. Maria, it was you who secretly stole my origin when you were treating me, right? Didn't you say that you were injured by a Taoist named Luya when you were attacking the immortal realm? She said with a chuckle. At first, I did think so. The archangel shook her head. But later on, I overturned this guess. Because someone appeared before me. Not only could he damage my origin, he could even easily make me forget about him. I almost thought that he was trying to set some rules for me behind my back. And then, her smile deepened. Later, I overthrew this thought again. The archangel said calmly, since he can make me be forgotten, he naturally disdains such a method of hurting people in the dark. Maria, I can only think of you. During this period of time, the only one who has come into contact with me, the only one who has a reasonable reason to attack me during treatment. In fact, the only one who has a reasonable reason to not appear even in the saint's resurrection ritual should be the imprisoned Virgin Mary. End of chapter. Chapter 23:55. Well, can you put me down first? Listening to the archangel reveal Maria's story was very interesting. Unfortunately, this posture was too sullen. It was not in line with her character. Little Madanzo suggested, "There are thorns all over here. If I put you down, you will die." The archangel said indifferently, "Children should not crawl on the ground and be covered with wounds." King. The archangel shook her head and signaled Madanzo to stop talking. In the broken church, the woman called Maria looked calm. Her face was full of love, and her eyes were full of compassion. Her body was seductive, but her face was not blasphemous. She was always a child in the eyes of the believers, the mother of the Son of God. Maria, Lily, I can understand her, because that is the tragedy born from my obsession. The archangel sighed slowly, but why are you also? Is it because of the imprisonment in the monastery? Because I am bored. She chuckled and said, "Listen, listen, listen, repeat every day, repeat, repeat, repeat. As for me, I also want to play happily in the world of flowers." You are the saint of the middle protection, the archangel said in a deep voice. Maria narrowed her eyes and said with a smile, it seems that you have been trained very well. This makes people jealous. I originally wanted to train you well. The archangel said indifferently, "Maria, go back to the monastery with me." Maria sighed and said faintly, "If I go back with you, can my child come back?" "You have the title of the Holy Mother. You gave it to me, but it doesn't mean that I have to bear its weight." Maria said indifferently, even he can let go of the kingdom of heaven. What reason do I have? I will take you back. The archangel was indifferent but firm. Then you have to work hard. Maria smiled and said, I took 30% of your origin, and you just received 1,000,000 divine gifts. How much power do you have left now? The archangel shook her head. The kingdom of heaven is not mine alone. Maria, even if I can't defeat you, I still have Raquel, Raphael, Gabriel and Moses and John. Me too. Little Madanzo raised her arm. I used to be very good at fighting too. I'm dying. Since you've given me 1,000,000 God's blessings, can you give me one too? The archangel only did 2 actions. First, he threw little Madanzo onto the thorny ground. Secondly, he swung the cross sword of holy light at the Holy Mother. In heavenly state there were 2 ways to reason. Using one's mouth to reason could be said until the end of time, but when one's mouth could not be said, one could also use one's fists to reason. The fist was the truth, and the void was the truth. Holy light. The archangel chanted the gospel. Aria, Maria murmured softly. There was no cool name for the move. Everything was very simple. The holy light was all that the archangel had, and the aria was all that Maria had. The small, broken church could not withstand the expansion of the holy light and the power of the aria and exploded completely. In the explosion of power, little Madanzo was thrown out instantly. Old me's situation doesn't look good. How much power of the aria has this Holy Mother accumulated? Although she did not have the ability to participate in the battle, Madanzo was still knowledgeable. Almost instantly, she saw the subtle changes in strength between the two sides. That's... At this moment, Madanzo's eyes lit up. It turned out that not only was she thrown out, but Metatron was also thrown out. Moreover, the thorny branches on Metatron were broken. Madanzo felt that the heavens were helping her. Her little body, which was floating in the sea of information, desperately swam in the direction of Metatron. While Old Me and the Holy Mother are fighting, it's a good time to absorb the system. Her little hand reached out to Metatron. Madanzo shouted with all her might, "Please, the other me!" But at this moment, 36 pairs of white wings suddenly appeared on Metatron's thin body. The wings turned grayish-white in an instant. Metatron's left eye was chaotic, while its right eye was clear, but its right eye was rapidly being invaded by chaos at the same time. "My side is..." Metatron said softly, "Please, the real me." The grayish-white wings flapped instantly, and a gust of wind blew little Madanzo out in an instant. At the same time, countless thorns poured down on Metatron from top to bottom. Madanzo and the others widened their eyes. At the end of the thorns was Maria's palm. "Metatron, after such a long time, your ultra-level has finally decayed to the point where it can be absorbed." Maria's chuckling voice rang out. "I really have to thank Legel for secretly creating this shelter for you. But, even if it's Legel, I'll still give you a harbor to live in, okay? Otherwise, everything I've done will be in vain." Bright red roses instantly bloomed on the thorny vines. At the same time, Metatron's body instantly dried up. In Maria's palm, a strange eye was slowly appearing. "It's you, you're the one who killed me, it's you?" Madanzo instantly shuddered. Maria didn't respond. The power of the chant suddenly expanded to an unbelievable extent. The brilliance of the holy light was completely suppressed in an instant. The archangel fell from a high place, but he managed to catch the bottom and finally steadied himself beside Madanzo. But his face didn't look too good. He had lost 30% of his source of power and more than 1,000,000 gods' gifts to fight against the mutants of the Holy Light Kingdom. However, his opponent was Maria, who had a special position in the Kingdom of Heaven and whose level wasn't lower than his. "It's over." Madanzo looked dejected. "Didn't I say that the descending Holy Sun should just descend directly? Why did you have to say that it's sacred to be born from the mother's body and represent love and hope? Look at what happened now. Metatron, watch your words." The archangel suddenly yelled angrily. King Loyal. Madanzo couldn't help but mutter. But it was only a mutter. At the same time, the surroundings were covered by thorns that bloomed with red roses. It was like a huge thorny sphere, a cage. Maria, who had devoured Metatron's decayed ultra-level, was standing at the top of this thorny cage. The brilliance all over her body became extremely demonic. 1. Maria lowered her head and looked at the eye on her left palm. Then, her gaze moved and landed on the archangel. You are my second target. Your ultra-level of the Kingdom of Heaven will soon be mine." The archangel's gaze instantly contracted. He said in a deep voice, "Maria, this is your goal. You also want Trinity? I also want to go to Primordial. Maria, aren't you afraid that you will explode?" Madanzo suddenly scolded angrily. "You are already useless." Maria raised her hand gently. Madanzo suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, "Maria, I have a magical scripture here that I exchanged with Joy a few hundred void years ago when I drank tea with it. It said that it can adjust yin and yang and the fusion will be more effective. Do you want to try it with me? It calls this dual cultivation. You are a strong woman and I am a weak man. You have more benefits." The archangel looked at Madanzo in disbelief, and couldn't help but sigh. Then, his gaze returned to normal. He had already pretended that he didn't know this person. You want to duel cultivation with me? Maria showed a delicate smile. You still like to harm people, Madanzo. Oh, Madanzo. Let's not talk about whether a sexless angel like you can do this kind of thing. Even if you can, I don't intend to try it. It's too easy to self-destruct if you try to use the method of other divine systems to advance. It's better to be careful. As for the problem of being too full, it's not a problem. Holy Mother's hypostasis is tolerant. Madanzo glanced at Maria's bigger part. Well, it's indeed more tolerant. Tolerance is great, right? Then, can you forgive me and let me live? Little Metatro blinked his eyes. That's right. Maria chuckled and said, I let you witness the birth of the new Trinity. The Archangel's expression changed slightly at this time. Maria put his hands together and began to chant. As the Holy Mother chanted, the thorny cage instantly turned into a sea of bright red roses. The petals fell and instantly buried more than half of the Archangel's body. The power of the Heavenly King was extremely weak at this time. He couldn't break free from the erosion of the sea of petals. The thorny branches even began to entangle his body. Metatron, I will find a way to send you away, and tell Raphael everything that happened here. The Archangel's voice sounded in Madanzo's ears. Calm. It was so calm that Madanzo felt scared. Old me, what do you want to do? The future of Heavenly King and you. The Archangel's body instantly released a dazzling light. The faith of the Lord will not disappear. I am just a speck of dust in the faith. I am not great. You're crazy. You're King crazy. Metatro was stunned. This didn't seem to be the guy he knew. Although that guy was fanatical, he wasn't fanatical to the point of almost losing his mind. You want to destroy your own status, Maria exclaimed. At the same time, she seemed to be flustered and exasperated. You want to save everyone. Why do you want to save me too? The moment the holy light shone to the limit, it was like when a planet collapsed. Everything would be destroyed, crushed, and engulfed. The thorny cage and the sea of flowers were instantly destroyed. However, a gentle force covered Madanzo and threw her out. The collapse of the holy light was like a pair of big hands that tightly bound Maria's body, not allowing her to leave. Why, I can also become the new pillar of Heavenly King. The Archangel, who had already turned into a shadow, almost melted in the holy light. She was thrown away as if she was being expelled. Her body was sinking into the deep sea. The holy light's brilliance was getting farther and farther away from her. Madanzo subconsciously reached out her small hand. She couldn't grab these. It's like this again. It was like this when Celian was here, and it is also like this now. I can grab everything, but I can't save anything. What Secretary of Heavenly King? What Metatron? Her vision began to blur. She no longer had the cynical expression on her face. She was at a loss, as if she had sunk into the depths of the ocean, far away from the holy light. Madanzo! Who is calling me? Madanzo, wake up! Who? Madanzo, I believe in you. In the darkness, she opened her eyes slightly and saw a milky white light ball that was slowly falling. She subconsciously reached out her hand, but she couldn't stop her body from falling. It's so warm, but I can't reach it. There's no other way. Madanzo! Don't give up. Who are you? Tell me, Madanzo. A pair of warm hands seemed to grab her hand. Madanzo opened her eyes again, and there was a bright figure floating in front of her. Celian, she murmured the name of the only person who had wholeheartedly given her faith. Madanzo! Why aren't you King waking up? Light and shadow floated and became clear in an instant. Madanzo's consciousness shuddered, and Nan Xiaonan's face was reflected in her eyes. You are sincere. Just this once. Go. It's yours. Metatro's body was flung upwards, and the milky white ball of light came closer and closer in his line of sight. Closer and closer, closer and closer and closer. Grab. Me. You can't stop me. An angry voice rang out from the collapsing holy light. The sound of chanting rang out in the midst of the destructive holy light. It was like a battle between two storms. And at the center of this destructive collision, everything suddenly calmed down. Dispelling. All the chaos subsided at this moment. The sky was clear. At this moment, the little baby put his hands together. Something was brewing in the space between his hands. All the benevolence was here. The collapse of the holy light disappeared, and the archangel's body gradually solidified. He stared at the little baby in a daze, as if he had understood something. Father, are you really gone? At this moment, the Grand Lord of Heavenly Kingdom knelt down without hesitation. The red flowers withered, and Maria stared at the light of benevolence on the baby in a daze. Her hands suddenly dropped down weakly, and 2 lines of clear tears flowed out of her eyes. Messiah! The tiny light ball of hands slowly merged into the baby's body. He opened his golden eyes and murmured softly, I'm Madanzo, the Holy Son of Heavenly Kingdom. The arrival of the Holy Son was to save the world. The Holy Son was the Savior of the world. Chapter 23:56. The highest statuses in Kingdom of Heaven were a Holy Father, Holy Son, and a Holy Spirit. He was the supreme ruler of Kingdom of Heaven. In all the legends of Kingdom of Heaven, he was omniscient and omnipotent. He was omnipotent and omnipotent, but he couldn't achieve immortality. That was only in the legends in a narrow sense. Since the Holy Son's status was integrated into her body, little Madanzo had this understanding. But she didn't care much about these things. The Holy Son's status was a savior. When disaster struck, when people were in despair, the power of the Holy Son's status would become stronger. This was the light of hope that people hoped for in despair. It was redemption. Holy Father was love, Holy Son was redemption, and Holy Spirit was mercy. Maria, in the destroyed thorn cage, Madanzo's voice sounded slowly. Maria, who was absent-minded due to the appearance of the Holy Son's status, looked up blankly. Her shoulders trembled, not out of fear, but out of palpitation. Including her own Holy Mother's status and Metatron's rotten status, she only had 2 statuses. Without the Holy Mother's status, she wouldn't be sublimated. The Savior status of the Holy Son was enough to beat her back to her original state. Are you going to judge me? She became calm instead. Madanzo blinked and smiled. Maria, are you hungry? And me, are you hungry? Archangel and Maria looked at each other subconsciously. They suddenly thought of a question that they were curious about. Was it good or bad for Kingdom of Heaven that Madanzo inherited the Holy Son's status? I'm hungry, Madanzo said faintly. Why fight? Sit down and drink tea and eat snacks. Metatron. Archangel was deep in thought. At this moment, the chaotic destiny system seemed to have been sorted out by something. The chaotic sea of information turned into a calm golden sea. Madanzo was like the sun at this time, slowly rising, it was still rising. There's only half of the Saint's status. The other half is with John, but, Madanzo muttered in the midst of her ascension, only half is given to me because they want me to complete it myself. According to my own wishes, sublimate. I am Madanzo, Heavenly States, True Saint. Freedom City, Mountainside Villa District. In the mountain road and the forest on the hillside, a large number of mutated creatures were like wild beasts. Isha's sniping from high up in the sky could not suppress them at all. She could only barely clear some of them. At the foot of the mountain, the entire mountain was filled with mutants. Asakes, hang in there. Since the birth of the mutation, Asakes almost did not have a moment of rest. Isha was already beginning to worry about whether Asash's body could hold on. Although she did not understand why the vampire power obtained from a book of Gaia could be used in the Freedom City, as a former high-ranking member of the God-blessed church, she was very clear about the existence of vampires. Essex had not eaten for a long time. He did not immediately return to the Freedom City after leaving the God-blessed church. Instead, he experienced the world of cold winter. This guy was probably starving. At this moment, a figure instantly jumped down from the mountain road and rushed down to the foot of the mountain. It was Essex. This guy, what is he trying to do? Isha anxiously pressed the communicator beside her ear. K'er Lily. Call him back. Didn't I say that the anti-forgery line cannot go past the middle section of the road? Boss Essex said that he saw people at the foot of the mountain. He should be able to. What a reckless guy. Isha gritted her teeth and said, his fangs can't be retracted. At this moment, the helicopter suddenly flipped over. In the cockpit, Isha pointed her gun at the pilot and ordered him to descend the helicopter. A torrent rushed up to the sky and appeared in a gas station at the foot of the mountain. The terrible explosion almost shook the mountain, and the strong airflow affected the balance of the helicopter. A large number of mutated people were blown into pieces by this explosion. Isha ignored the pilot's advice and forced herself to land on this slaughterhouse-like explosion site. Flames, blood mist, suffocation, thick smoke billowed. Arthashis is here. This explosion was caused by him. Isha hurriedly searched for that stubborn figure in the raging flames. Essex! She had already seen him. His figure was floating amidst the thick smoke and raging flames. Putting down the sniper rifle in her hand, Isha quickly ran to the swaying figure in the fire, but at this moment, a smaller figure ran out from the swaying figure and rushed towards Isha. Take good care of this child, Isha. Isha abruptly stopped as she felt a small figure pouncing towards her. It was a child with a face full of fear and tears. She subconsciously caught the child, and only then did she clearly see the figure not far away in the firelight. His black hair had already turned gray. His pupils had been occupied by blood, his fangs, sharp fangs, accompanied by the trembling of his lips, as if he was going to kill something in the next second. Essex slowly raised his wrist and bit it directly into his wrist. His arm was full of bloody bite marks. Essex, I won't go back. Essex finally gave Isha a smile. Please help me tell K'er Lily that I'm not a good boss. Goodbye. His demonic bat wings spread open at this moment. The blood vessels on his pale face throbbed madly. He gritted his teeth and instantly charged into the sky, charging in the direction where the large number of mutants had gathered and were swarming over. Isha stared blankly at the figure that had already gone far away. She suddenly fell down on the ground. The child in her arms hugged her tightly, fearfully and cautiously asked, Big sister, that uncle, will he come back? Isha's body trembled slightly. She took a deep breath, showing an ugly smile, and slightly combed the child's messy hair. Do you know how to pray? Well, I've finished reciting saints' quotations. The child hesitated, but I can't open my system. No quotations. Isha shook her head. We don't need the system, we just need to pray for him. The child seemed to have a hard time understanding this kind of behavior. In the Free City, in the Holy Light Kingdom, praying was for the saints. All praises and offerings were for the saints. There was no need to pray for others, because there was no sadness in the Holy Light Kingdom. Except for this time. Praying for others is also a kind of virtue. Isha muttered, Why can't I? She slowly closed her eyes. Seeing this, the child copied Isha. Big sister, what are the words of prayer? Isha softly said, I pray for you to be safe. At this moment, a ray of holy light descended from the sky, directly shining on Isha's body. Her heart couldn't help but tremble, and she subconsciously raised her head. In the sky, a blazing angel slowly descended. I am Legel, the master of the palace of the second heaven. The blazing angel softly said, Are you willing to accept my God's gift, brave one? Ah! Her blood seemed to be boiling, burning. Burning her body, burning her limbs, burning her eyes, burning her nose, burning her throat, burning her brain. The mutated were like beasts, and he was also like a beast, dozens, hundreds, who knew how many mutated corpses fell at his feet. He was like a merciless killing machine. His body was already covered with terrifying injuries. What would I look like in the end? It was said that when a vampire was completely lost, they would become a blood-sucking monster without any scruples, and would lose their rationality. That seemed to be the case. As the Rose Earl, he had naturally seen more than one vampire who was completely lost due to hunger. Essex couldn't help but ask himself with his weak rationality, if he knew that this would be the outcome when he returned to the Free City, would he still want to come back? Wouldn't it be better to be the Rose Earl in the Blessed City? So tired, living in the world of cold winter wasn't bad either. After all, it was a world of magic, and there were evil witches. One more vampire shouldn't be a problem. So painful, was it also this painful when the saints were burned at the stake, already, can't kill anymore. Then Essex suddenly stopped. Outside the hundreds of corpses, even more ferocious mutated creatures rushed over like a huge wave. Just like that, he slowly let his hands hang down with the weakest will. He let such a huge wave completely drown him. Descendant of the saint family, I want to give my last glory to you, ancestor. This time, I didn't embarrass myself. He slowly closed his eyes. They were confused and drowned like a tide. They didn't care whether he was a vampire or not, they only wanted blood and flesh, and something on this vampire that attracted their bloodthirsty desire. Bite, bite. Next, they would divide the food. Something suddenly illuminated the crazed mutated's body. The extreme radiance actually made the shadow of the mutated's figure even more profound. The mutated creatures seemed to be alarmed by something. They were afraid. The moment the brilliance reached its peak, the mutated creatures' bodies disappeared like air. Dispersed. In the sky, a ball of light slowly descended. When the ball of light came, a girl holding a sword slowly walked over. She walked to Asash's side. Beside the girl, there was a little guy flying like a fairy. The girl lowered her head to look at Essex, only to see a faint smile on his face. However, his chest had been dug open, revealing a bright red heart that didn't beat. Serene, the girl muttered at this time, I feel so uncomfortable. The girl slowly knelt beside Essex, holding Asash's palm with both hands. The heart that had stopped beating suddenly beat. Essex slowly opened his eyes. In the light, the girl's face was reflected in his sight. You are Miss Jahan. I'm sorry I can't save you. The girl whispered, Do you have anything to say? Finally. Arthashes's lips moved slightly, and his vision blurred once again. His heart, which had only beat once, stopped beating once more. I really seem to have seen the saint, Mr. Essex. His eyes were no longer focused. They fell down weakly. The girl sat beside him absent-mindedly, until Asash's body suddenly ignited with a black flame. His body burned little by little, and finally turned into ashes. The fire made the air rise, and the ashes were blown away by the wind. Saint. Where is the saint? The girl muttered to herself. After seeing all this, her innate sense of mission made her feel as if her heart was bitten by a snake. She heard many calls, calling for the saint, many prayers, praying for the saint, many pleading for the saint. There was no saint. There is no saint. The girl slowly stood up. Since there is no saint, then let me be the saint, even if it's just a fake. The little fairy flew in front of the girl, turned into a light, enlarged, and turned into a light shadow. In the light shadow, there seemed to be a young man in white. The girl looked at the light shadow absent-mindedly. It held something in its hands, and its lips moved slightly, as if it was saying something silently. The girl subconsciously reached out her hand. The moment they touched, a pillar of light shot up into the sky, shining on the entire holy mountain of the Free City. The light of hope. That is, Isha had just felt the fluctuation of divine power coming from her body, and before she was familiar with it, she was attracted by the light of hope. Beside her, the blazing angel, who claimed to be the master of the palace of the second heaven, looked at the pillar of light thoughtfully, and muttered to himself, "The birth of a new saint at this time? What a familiar feeling! A new saint." Isha subconsciously looked up. Legel whispered, "Saints are born in disasters. In other words, it is easiest for a new saint to be born in a disaster. Who knows? No matter what it is, at least it brings the light of hope." Lord Legel waved his hand. "I still want to continue the divine bestowment. You are my first divine warrior. From now on, you are no longer a believer of the Holy Light Kingdom. You are my divine warrior, and I will give you the title of the first divine warrior. Go, saving the world is never a matter of one or two people, it should be a matter of a group of people with hope in their hearts." Isha's expression turned serious, and she respectfully said, "Yes, Your Majesty." The new saint was rising, and the light of hope was constantly spreading, slowly dispersing the dark clouds above the free city. It had just been born everywhere, and it was not strong. It still needed more support, but everything had already taken shape. On the ground, the young man in white who had returned to the form of a little fairy was powerlessly lying on the ground. But a hand picked it up from the ground. The little fairy was astonished and looked at the person who had picked it up with a trace of horror. It was the person that it had seen many times, Boss Luo. "Hello, Your Excellency, me. The little fairy opened its mouth and finally lowered its head dejectedly. Boss Luo smiled and said, "I did something a little overboard to the Archangel. It was because of you that it was a little overboard, but it was not very overboard." The little fairy opened its mouth again, and then only a bitter smile was left. It was a fairy born from the memories and regrets of the saint's statue in the Free City, where Saint Me-er was located. During the long wait, it bore the faith of the believers in the Free City and used itself as a container to silently brew a new hypostasis. Hope Hypostasis. Chapter 23:57. Sand was swirling in the wind, and the dust was like stars. The black ashes were collected little by little, and finally fell into a pair of white palms. Miss Maid read his name softly. "Arthashes, you've done well." She held it in her arms. The light of hope shone in the Free City. Miss Maid looked at the young girl Jean, who bore the expectations of all the believers in the light, and thought. Boss Luo quietly walked to her side with a listless elf in his hand. "Jean d'Arc." Elf spoke for the first time. It turned out that it was not unable to speak. "A new legend has been born." Miss Maid said indifferently, "Congratulations, Sir Me-er." Elf opened her mouth and said faintly, "It was originally prepared for you, although I'm very grateful, I don't need this kind of thing anymore." Miss Maid shook her head and said softly, "Me-er, Milord, please assist her well and let the Free Cities have more faith." Elf was startled. She was Me-er, but also not Me-er. She was just a form of obsession, a spiritual body born from the combination of the believers in the Free City in the statue of the Saint of Freedom. The true Archangel is invisible to it, for it is what is severed by the Archangel. Boss Luo waved his hand and Elf was sent to the light of hope. He looked at Miss Maid and said softly, "Is this enough?" Miss Maid tilted her head and said seriously, "If one of the 7 capitals is missing, the quality of the believers in the Holy Light Kingdom will be much worse. The birth of a new saint also signifies the arrival of a new dividend of faith. Me-er is very familiar with this operation, and with his help, the new saint, Hope, should be able to completely take over the City of Freedom in the shortest time possible." She could always rationally find a very suitable reason. But this was obviously not what Boss Luo wanted to hear. He put his finger on Miss Maid's lips. "This is the first time I see you speaking insincerely." Miss Maid gently leaned her head on Boss Luo's shoulder and said faintly, "At that time, I didn't want to leave the Free Cities, finally." Boss Luo gently stroked her long hair. "You're honest now." The light of hope flickered. At the girl's side, A tiny sprite welcomed. The radiance continued to strengthen. The survivors hiding in the free cities felt the warmth brought by the light of hope and involuntarily walked out. On the streets, the mutants stopped moving under the illumination of the light of hope. Their bodies began to burn with murky white flames, as if they were being purified. The mutants who had stopped turned into ashes with a strange and peaceful look on their faces. As long as it was a place where the light of hope could shine. However, it wasn't enough to illuminate the entire Holy Light Kingdom. The 7 capitals were enormous, comparable to a complete world. The light of hope only illuminated the area around the free cities. For the time being, I can only do this much in the light of hope, the girl Jahan murmured as she looked further away. From the moment she accepted the deification and the hope hypostasis, she was already inextricably linked to the Holy Light Kingdom. Saints were born with knowledge, and her knowledge was increasing at an unbelievable speed with every moment. Her perception could clearly sense that the Holy Light Kingdom at this time was soaked in black oil. The hypostasis of hope? A tender voice entered the girl Jahan's ears at this time. There was no one around her, and the voice came from the heavens and the earth. He actually came up with such a precious hypostasis. Old me is also quite hard-working. Who are you? Saint Madanzo. The voice sounded slowly. Lend me your light of hope temporarily. Before the girl Jahan could react, she felt that the light around her seemed to be sucked away by something at this time, and it was instantly cast toward the center of the Holy Light Kingdom. At the same time, an even larger and more dazzling light broke through the sky from the center. Its light could actually illuminate the free cities, even if it was tens of thousands of miles away. At this time, the 7 capitals were all illuminated by this huge light. This is... The girl Jahan's understanding was refreshed again. The light of salvation. The Holy Father, a Saint, and a Holy Spirit were the highest 3 hypostases in the kingdom of heaven. Each of them had absolute authority in the kingdom of heaven. The wee Saint not only ruled the Holy Light Kingdom, but also the rest of the kingdom of heaven. It had already broken away from the drive of pure faith because it was the source of faith itself. Madanzo could have no believers, but it could also be the source of all believers' faith. I represent the kingdom of heaven. It could already use all the power of the kingdom of heaven. Purify the world. A ripple appeared from the center of the Holy Light Kingdom and spread at an extremely fast speed. In the light of salvation, the holy aura on Madanzo became stronger and stronger like the sun. This, tomorrow, completely dispelled all the darkness in the Holy Light Kingdom. The Archangel and Maria were both pulled out of the destiny system by Madanzo. The Archangel looked at Madanzo, who was gradually disappearing in the tomorrow, with a complicated expression, and couldn't help but sigh slowly. Where did it go? Maria asked faintly. The Archangel didn't respond. He glanced at Maria and waved his hand, and a chain of holy light hit Maria's 4 limbs. Come back to the monastery with me. She didn't even resist. In the free cities, in a dilapidated courtyard hidden in a corner, more than a dozen half-grown children were surrounding the bed. The children knelt beside the sleeping nun, Celian, and prayed devoutly for her. Even when the mutants were at their most dangerous, they didn't leave. At this moment, a ray of light appeared in the room, illuminating the figures of these tired children. The children stared blankly at this ray of light, only to see a child that was even smaller than them, as if he had just been born, slowly appear in the light. Celian, I can save you now, a sigh sounded. The ray of light swayed in the room and then gradually faded away. The children woke up from their dreams. Suddenly, Kelly shouted in surprise, Sister Celian is awake. On the window, the pale nun lady propped herself up. Her long hair covered half of her face. She looked tired. Looking at the joyful faces in front of the window, she murmured, I think I slept for a long time. At the dome of the Holy Maiden ceremony in the Free Cities, the ray of light shook, and Madanzo slowly walked out of the ray of light. The Son of Salvation was very intelligent. At least, it liked things that were intelligent. Anyway, there were many things that could be done as a gesture. No one? However, at the dome, Madanzo looked around. Except for a screen with 3 columns of data, it didn't see the person that it expected to see. Are you looking for me? Madanzo's eyes moved slightly. It had heard this voice before. Jai's voice, Brother Xiaoya's voice, Azia's voice, Zhu's voice, and Prince of Early Spring's voice. Metatro heaved a sigh of relief. I think it's about time for me to formally meet you. It slowly turned around, and its body shone brightly, but what it saw was not only Boss Luo, but also Miss Maid and Nan Xiaonan. The moment it saw Nan Xiaonan, the ray of light on Madanzo's body seemed to shake a little. What do you mean by, it's time for me to meet my boss? Lady Nan said with a look of disdain. Isn't it because you were a Hui before and were too embarrassed to meet people? Now that you have inherited the Son of God, you have some confidence? The ray of light on Madanzo's body fluctuated again. It rolled its eyes at Nan Xiaonan. Damn it, I was exposed. Nan Xiaonan, I will remember you. Boss Luo smiled and waved his hand to signal Nan Xiaonan to be quiet. He walked to Madanzo. I was dealing with something just now, so I left temporarily. Sorry that I didn't show up immediately. I just arrived too. Madanzo smiled and rolled its eyes at Nan Xiaonan, but now it couldn't help but stare at her. They had a special communication posture. Madanzo, rubbish newbie, tell me, what is your boss type? Why are you talking to him? Nan Xiaonan rolled its eyes. Is that my boss? Madanzo was anxious. You don't have to say it. At the end of the book, I have a backup of the things you were forced to learn by Gamma. Should I send an email to Joan of Arc another day? Nan Xiaonan was also anxious. You motherf asterisk cur. Your Excellency Madanzo, you seem to have a good relationship with Lady Nan. Boss Luo suddenly said at this time. Madanzo coughed twice and immediately said seriously, I came here this time, I think you should know my intention. The managers of the 7 capitals and John are still detained in the Book of Gaia. Madanzo, the managers of the 7 capitals and John have been sent back. They are now in the studio below. Miss Maid said indifferently, You don't have to worry about this. The Kingdom of Holy Light is still in the contract period. We won't let anything happen to it. Madanzo couldn't help but sneer. Won't let anything happen to it? What a nice way to put it. I finally understood the data on the screen. A disaster. The Kingdom of Holy Light lost more than 1/3 of its believers. This still counts as nothing happened? Senior. Nan Xiaonan quickly said at this time, the mutants were not created by my boss. It was all done by Balaam. What? Madanzo's expression changed slightly. Nan Xiaonan said with a serious expression, Balaam has been the president of the City of Dawn for a very long time. As the source of the holy water, how much holy water do you think he's secretly injected into the city? Madanzo's expression was uncertain. Nan Xiaonan sighed and said, Holy water can pollute a large area as long as it is put into the water source. The City of Dawn is the disaster area. Next is Canaan, which is close to the City of Dawn, and the City of Blazing Sky. Through the water supply system, it slowly spread to all the 7 capitals. You're saying that all the believers in the Kingdom of Holy Light have been contaminated by the holy water. The contamination is real, but not all of them. Nan Xiaonan shook her head and said, After the holy water was put in, it was diluted by a large amount. Some believers who are strong enough will only feel dizzy for a while, have a small cold, and don't feel anything at all. However, some who are not immune will be affected. It's only a matter of time before they mutate. This time, my boss just found out all the mutants together. Why don't you let these mutants live in the Kingdom of Holy Light? How many will mutate today, and how many will mutate tomorrow? Today, this city will be sealed, and tomorrow, that village will be sealed. Are you willing to do this? Madanzo pondered and said, "Your boss is capable. I don't believe that he can't create an antidote that can get rid of the contamination of the holy water." Nan Xiaonan sneered and said, "How did Balaam come about? It's because of your outer god placement plan. Why did the kingdom of holy light have this disaster? Isn't it because of the higher-ups of heavenly state?" Madanzo said indifferently, "Don't forget why heavenly state is constantly developing faith." Nan Xiaonan snorted and said, "You make it sound like heavenly state couldn't afford the rent before the outer god placement plan. I was just a small shrimp in the void dimension in the past. It's not the first time I've seen the tyranny of heavenly state. Your expedition angel army clears every place they go. Have you considered the feelings of small shrimps like us? You're getting greedier and greedier, and you're blaming others for stealing from your home?" Madanzo was not angry. She just sighed and said, "Sigh, I want to throw away my responsibilities." Nan Xiaonan shrugged and said, "Don't worry. Before your old father left, he had already arranged everything for you." Madanzo couldn't help but frown. She subconsciously looked at Boss Luo. Boss Luo said, "Before he left, he revised the contents of the contract with us. From the next contract, the rental fee of heavenly state will no longer be settled with the souls and willpower of believers." Madanzo's gaze was horrified. Even her body trembled a little. According to the new contract, Boss Luo slowly stretched out his palm. In his palm, a milky white ball of light slowly emerged. "From now on, the settlement method of heavenly state will be changed to drawing from the Holy Spirit position." "How can this be? How can this be?" Madanzo fell to the ground in a daze and stared blankly at the Holy Spirit position. He gave up his legend, gave up his path? Boss Luo held the Holy Spirit position with both hands and walked into the air. His hands slowly opened. The Holy Spirit was like a small stone that slowly fell to the ground. Boss Luo said softly, "Love will never stop. It doesn't need you to believe in it. It only needs you to live in this kingdom of holy light. All the laughter, all the joy, and all the happiness will nourish it. It will bear the fruit of love again and again. But remember, when there is no love in your heart, it will wither. The kingdom of holy light will also disappear. Can you do it?" The Holy Spirit fell to the ground. A wisp of gospel gently spread with the wind. It was the sound of His love rising. End of this chapter. Chapter 23:58. A giant golden battleship was traveling in the dimension. Countless lights flashed past it. Time seemed to be automatically bouncing off its body. This wasn't just the void of the dimension. It was also the ocean of time. Suddenly, 3 streams of light landed on the deck of the golden battleship. Soon, they sank into the special dock. Princess Angelique was the first to walk out of Kauros's cockpit. Her body slowly descended under the weak gravity. After that, Renina and Mei Shi also jumped down from their respective battle armors. Finally, Kale Lot opened its hands and spat out a ball of light. The light sphere landed. Inside was Balaam's president and Lily, who was in a daze. "What is this place?" Lilith felt a terrible pressure every second. She felt that she was so fragile in this huge dock that she would shatter at the slightest touch. At this moment, Angelique said calmly, "Meshi, help Balaam settle down first. I still have a task for him to complete. As for this woman..." Her Royal Highness glanced coldly at Lilith, who was feeling uneasy. This gaze made Lily's heart tremble. She tried her best to put on a friendly smile. "Let her do odd jobs on the ship as a trainee," Angelique said calmly. "As you wish, Your Highness." Meshi nodded. Lily was a bit confused. Odd jobs, trainee like a servant? She was the saint of Heavenly Kingdom, however. There was no time for Lily to sigh. The serious ponytail girl had already signaled her to follow with her eyes. Angelige didn't linger in the dock. Instead, she used the ship's teleportation and appeared in a spacious grassland. Blue sky, grassland, and a lake in the distance. Under the shade of a tree that was dozens of meters tall, There was a huge tea table. This was still the interior of the spaceship. At the same time, it was also the main control center of the spaceship. Before Angelique and Lenina arrived, there was already a blonde girl with 2 ponytails under the shade of the tree. The girl made a mattress on the ground and curled up under the blanket. Beside her were dozens of flashing light bottles. "You are really carefree, Kaliana." The gloomy girl's cold voice made the girl under the blanket slowly turn her head. The blonde girl had a donut in her mouth. Blink. The donut instantly disappeared into the girl's mouth. She hammered her chest hard before hurriedly getting up and running to Princess Angelique. "Your Highness, I am not slacking off," Her Royal Highness smiled. She reached out her finger and wiped the sugar powder on the girl's lips. "Have you found the thing I asked you to find?" Kaliana's face was slightly red. "For the time being, I have found 3 suitable subworlds, but I am not sure yet. Sorry. Send the information to my terminal." Princess Angelique nodded. "I will look at it later. If there is anything, you can tell Lenina. I am a little tired. I will take a rest first." With that, Princess Angelique slowly walked into the tree. Her figure finally disappeared into the tree trunk. "What is Her Royal Highness doing?" The blonde girl with 2 ponytails showed a look of confusion. "Lenina, is your mission this time?" "We saw him," Lenina said softly. Kaliana's face changed slightly. She subconsciously grabbed Lenina's arm. "Really? Did Her Royal Highness Angelique?" Lenina shook her head gently. "Her Royal Highness said that it is not the time yet." "Not the time yet?" Kaliana was stunned. "What do you mean by not the time yet?" Lenina thought for a moment and said, "Her Royal Highness said that he is very good now. There is no need to give him the memories of the past for the time being. But in that case we have more important things to do." Lenina shook her head. "We have waited for so long. It is not a big deal to wait a little longer. Besides, Gamma Sister has not really woken up yet." Kaliana pouted and said, "Gamma Sister is already a waste. That is also Gamma Sister." Lenina chuckled. "I will tell her this when I have the chance." "How can it be? I hate it." "Speaking of which, Kaliana, is your belly a little bigger? Why don't you add fat to your chest? If you continue like this, you will really have no competitiveness at all." "Tisk. Breasts are not the only core competitiveness. I will scratch you." The fight on the grass did not disturb the inside of the big tree. There was another world here. After Angelique casually washed up, she lay on a sofa. She had a broken crystal ball in her hand. The crystal ball was made up of pieces of irregular fragments, and there weren't many parts that were missing. A light screen suddenly lit up beside her. The person who appeared on the screen was Balam. "What's the matter?" Princess Angelique asked calmly. Balam was the guy who worked for her. Although she did not have a good impression of the so-called old rulers as a commander, she would not isolate the people under her because of her personal preferences. "Your Royal Highness, when I was in the Book of Gaia I used to," Balam said as he stretched out his hand. A golden page slowly floated out from his palm. Princess Angelique's eyes flickered slightly. "That person told me to give this page to someone. However, after the page entered my body, there was no movement. However, it appeared in my body again, so I thought, this is for me." Princess Angelique said calmly. She waved her hand, and the page in Balam's hand appeared before her. "You did well this time, Balam. I will give you a year. You can go as long as you want. However, you must remember the rules." Balam slowly lowered his head and said respectfully, "I know the rules. I will not destroy history. You may leave." Her Royal Highness waved her hand and the light screen disappeared. She caressed the page in her hand, and the words on it slowly appeared. "So you still remember?" she murmured. The golden battleship was still sailing in the space-time current, quietly. In the void. Perhaps he was no longer here, but him. He opened his eyes. Everything in front of him hadn't changed at all because of his sudden departure. The previous store manager was still sitting there half dead. "You have become purer, Elohim. It has been a long time since I heard you call me by that name." He smiled faintly. "I am very weak now. Perhaps an ordinary voyageur can kill me. Can I still reach primordial?" The previous store manager said casually. "Then, can you hear the call of primordial, now again?" His eyes were hazy and gradually deepened. He murmured, "I can hear it as if it is right in front of me." The previous store manager laughed eerily. "That proves that what you saw was an illusion. Because you made yourself pure, you thought you had taken a big step forward. In fact, you are just starting over. That is all." He looked indifferently at the former store manager who was on the verge of death and said indifferently, "I've already taken another step forward. What about you? When are you willing to set off?" "The end of my journey is different from yours," the previous store manager said slowly. "I do not have an end. Holy Light Kingdom, Freedom City, the residence of the Saint." The young girl, Jean, was sitting a little cautiously at the side. This was supposed to be the office of the Saint of Freedom, but at this moment, sitting in front of the desk was a baby who was hovering in the air with a pacifier in its mouth. The Holy Son of the Kingdom of Heaven, Madanzo. This was something that had happened 3 days ago. After the mutation disaster ended, the 7 capital cities of the Holy Light Kingdom were in the midst of rapid reconstruction. A large number of angels began to descend on the second day after the mutation disaster ended, becoming the main force of this reconstruction. "Old me. I want to get off work. This is not something a human can do, so I want to be a human. I don't want to be the Holy Son anymore. You're my successor." Metatron stood on the desk and roared, "You're abusing children." In fact, the Holy Son, Madanzo, was not the only one in the study. The young girl, Jean, saw the white-clothed young man who claimed to be an archangel, the bespectacled young man who claimed to be the owner of the second-day palace, and the most beautiful seraph named Raphael. Raphael was also the guy who led the angel army to descend on the second day after the mutation disaster ended. At this moment, the few seraphs in the study clearly did not care about Madanzo's roar. Instead, they were discussing something among themselves. The plan to place the outer gods in the Holy Light Kingdom has to be stopped. After this, the saints of the 7 capitals should have nothing to say, Raphael said indifferently. Raphael said indifferently, "Ever since they entered the 7 capitals, these guys have not been on the battlefield for too long. They have become lazy and inactive. It will be a headache to deal with these guys." Raphael shook his head and said, "Instead, some of the outer gods that have already been placed have already awakened and should be placed under supervision. As for those who have yet to awaken, we have to pay attention to them. It's not appropriate to expel them now." "I'll leave this matter to you, Raphael," the archangel said indifferently. Raphael shrugged, looking as if he had known this would happen. "Then, what about Maria? What do you plan to do with her?" "For now, she will be temporarily locked up in the monastery." The archangel pondered and said, "The change in the status of the kingdom of heaven this time is too intense. It's not appropriate to lose the status of the Holy Mother at this time. Too much turmoil will affect the faith of the subworlds. Now, there's no need to cultivate a large number of believers. Can the expedition plan be temporarily stopped?" Raphael frowned and asked. The archangel said, "The Holy Spirit needs to be supplied. Although there's no need to sacrifice believers, the Holy Spirit needs more irrigation. Otherwise, the Holy Spirit will also dry up." Raphael sighed. "In the future, it's still unknown how the kingdom of heaven will go. Moreover, the one who bears the status of the Holy Son is even." The few blazing angels looked at Madanzo, who was standing on the desk with her big pants cold. They shook their heads and sighed. "So, you guys are looking down on me?" Madanzo pointed at herself. Do you want me to spit milk all over your faces? TSK. The young girl Jean still looked at the blazing angels with a helpless expression. The reason why she could sit here was because of the hope status. As the new saint of the Free City, she was at a loss. It was easy for her to wield a sword, but for her to govern. Could she do it? That. The young girl Jean suddenly stood up. The blazing angels subconsciously looked at her. The young girl wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she could only say timidly, "That? I'll go and bring you some tea." With that, the young girl ran out of the saint's study as if she was escaping. She strolled in the unfamiliar residence of the saint. Everything here was more magnificent than Domremy village. The young girl Jean unknowingly walked into a room. It was said that this was the favorite room of the saint in the past. Here, one could see the scenery of the entire Free City. At this moment, a small shadow flew out from the young girl's shoulder. The little fairy danced around the young girl, jumping in joy. The young girl Jean seemed to be relieved at this moment. She gently teased the little fairy and smiled. "That archangel really can't see you. He didn't seem to react for so long just now." The little fairy wandered in the air and didn't have any reaction to this. The young girl Jean chuckled, but her gaze was suddenly attracted by a shelf in the room. She remembered that when she came to this room yesterday, there wasn't this shelf. Who put it here? She subconsciously walked in front of the shelf. The shelf was placed on the balcony and covered with a white cloth. The young girl hesitated for a moment before suddenly lifting the white cloth. What appeared in front of her was an easel. On the easel, there was a sketch of a scenery. The young girl trembled slightly and subconsciously touched the painting. That was her hometown. This angle, it was drawn on the windmill. She murmured, and a figure seemed to appear in front of her. The figure that accompanied her on the adventure and fell into the river with her. From the moment it appeared, it was deeply imprinted in her heart. "You have to be responsible. You promised my father," the young girl said softly. Today, she could look at this painting for the whole day. A rose mansion. The courier had been waiting outside the mansion for some time. At this moment, a young girl hurriedly walked out. The young girl's movements were inconvenient because her feet were shackled. This was a new law that was introduced on the second day after the end of the mutation disaster. For those who might continue to mutate, there would be a certain degree of restriction. "There's a package for you, Miss K. Lily." "It's for me." K. Lily looked at the package in shock. After she signed for it, she quickly walked into the Rose Mansion. The sound of the shackles on her feet was very crisp, but she was not bothered by it. This was the result that Miss Isha had fought for. As a vampire, it was already very fortunate that she could continue to stay in the Rose Mansion in this way. She did not know that she was really an outer god. No one told her this. The little maid of the Rose Mansion was just a little maid of the Rose Mansion. In the end, Boss Asakes did not come back. K. Lily began to write in her diary these few days. She planned to record everything that happened every day. Perhaps it was because she was afraid of forgetting, perhaps. This way, it feels like Boss Asakes is by my side. I will always be here waiting for you to come back. K. Lily opened the package. There was only a seed in the box, and there was nothing else. K. Lily picked up the seed in surprise. "This looks like the seed of a rose. Who sent it?" There was no signature, so naturally there was no way to know. K. Lily shook her head and casually planted the seed in the courtyard of the mansion. She watered and fertilized it. She was very good at taking care of the roses. "Sister K. Lily." A clear voice came from outside the door. K. Lily hurriedly opened the door again. At this time, there were several children in front of the door. In addition, there was a girl in a black nun's robe. "Sorry to disturb you again today," Celia said softly. "I made biscuits." K. Lily smiled slightly. "Come in." By the way, the Rose Mansion was no longer open as a hotel. It would replace Sister Celia's former courtyard that could no longer afford the rent. It would be a new orphanage. It would officially open soon. It was said that the saints had begun to reshape the destiny system. There would no longer be people who could not pray. Have you heard? That Mr. Wasco seems to have become the new principal of the City of Freedom Academy. They were chatting in the courtyard. Ah, I think I saw Mr. Asakes. He became so small. Even smaller than my palm. It's true. Look. Kelly pointed at the corner of the courtyard and said quickly. Ah, it ran away. Lily trembled slightly and looked around. The courtyard was still the same courtyard. She revealed a faint smile. Kelly, don't be naughty. No, I really saw it, but it disappeared again. Lily just gently rubbed Kelly's head and stood up. The biscuits should be ready. I'll go get them. Yay! Happy laughter sounded. She walked out of the courtyard. When she left, a rose bloomed in the corner. Lily was stunned. That should be the seed that she had just planted. When a little elf was leisurely sunbathing on the roof of the Rose Mansion. In the shop. In the room of the shop. Boss Luo gently held up the servant girl's palm. The smooth palm began to fade little by little, and finally turned into a puppet's palm. However, his palm was already filled with all kinds of cracks. He carefully touched these cracks and asked softly, "When did it start?" "When I was with Ms. Angelique on the other side, it was almost the limit," Miss Maid said softly. Boss Luo lowered his head and kissed the cracks on the palm. The cracks disappeared bit by bit. The doll's palm once again became delicate, soft, and elastic. It even had temperature. There was blood flowing and there was a sense of touch. Through the ends of her nerves, it gently passed to the depths of her soul. Miss Maid's body trembled slightly as if she had gotten rid of all the shackles. "How does it feel to have a body again?" Luochio asked softly. Miss Maid's eyes lit up. In fact, the puppet's sense of touch is no different from the real body. After all, the master has always added various tactile functions to it. "Is that all?" Luochio chuckled. She blinked her eyes and then sat directly on his lap. She held Luochio's face with both hands and gave him a gentle kiss. After a long time, she narrowed her eyes and whispered in Luochio's ear, "Do you want to do it?" He looked into her azure eyes, as if he was about to get lost in her body. He said softly, "You are my heaven, closed for a day." "What the hell?" Lady Nan rubbed her chin and looked at the sign hanging in front of the shop. It couldn't be. When she went out in the morning, she didn't say it was closed. "I'll wear it. F***CK. I can't wear it, so painful." End of this chapter. Chapter 2359. Although there was no official explanation, the rose could be seen as the city flower of Freedom City. Lady Nan held a bouquet of roses and came to a spacious apartment building. She couldn't go through the door, but this kind of ordinary building was a piece of cake. Black windbreaker, black sunglasses. Anyway, it was all black. This was Yulia's home. She should live with her parents, but the house was in a mess. Obviously, it had experienced a devastating destruction and didn't have time to clean it up. The claw marks on the wall clearly showed what happened here. It seemed that Yulia's parents didn't escape the mutation disaster. As for whether Yulia's parents became mutants or died tragically in the hands of mutants, Lady Nan didn't intend to find out. "This is the place where you lived." Nan Xiaonan looked around and then picked up a broken photo frame on the ground. The glass was broken, but the photo in the frame was still intact. She casually placed the photo frame and then walked into Yulia's room. The room wasn't messy and seemed to have survived the disaster. Nan Xiaonan hugged the white rose and sat on the chair that Yulia used to sit on. The first transaction ended in failure? This witch from the other world didn't have high expectations of herself at the beginning, but she always thought that she had the ability. Otherwise, she would have died in the void of the dimension. Although her luck hadn't been very good most of the time, she was more scared than hurt. She felt that she had the ability to make Yulia a holy maiden, but after a series of disasters, no one was paying attention to the selection for the holy maiden. How to choose. So many holy maiden candidates had been sacrificed in the end. They had appeared as destiny and became stepping stones to obtain super level. This was probably a nightmare for the believers of the free cities who still had memories of it. The live broadcast of a Book of Gaia had already destroyed the glorious image of the saintess candidates in people's hearts. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously sighed. She didn't know if it was because she felt pity for Yulia, or because she had broken the record of 0 failures. The shop had always delivered the goods first, then received the payment, and it had never failed. But when it came to her, the first business was gone. Nan Xiaonan could foresee that Miss Maid was sharpening her knife. She was afraid that she would sacrifice the shame of her shop to God. So why are we closing today? I really want to know, I really want to know, I really want to know. She shook her head. She had always adhered to the principle of living a peaceful life, so she decided not to think about it. Even if she thought about it, it would be useless if she couldn't solve it. She didn't want to think about it. She couldn't solve it. It was useless. She didn't want to think about it. Perhaps it would come sooner or later. Let's go, my first guest. The white roses were placed on the delicate dressing table. When Nan Xiaonan left, she took an earring and put it on her left ear. It was the proof of the failure of the first transaction. When she was about to leave, Nan Xiaonan didn't expect that she would actually meet an unexpected person downstairs, the one who was stripped of her original name by the maid, Isha. They looked at each other in surprise and didn't say anything. Isha was no longer the same as before. As the first God-bestowed warrior of Legel, this part of divine power wasn't recovered after the disaster. At this time, Isha had become a follower of Legel. The divine power flowing in Isha's body had surpassed the limit of ordinary masters in the subworld. But it would take a long time for her to adapt to this divine power. As for how far the queen could develop the divine power, it would depend on her luck. Do you want to have a drink? Isha asked. Anyway, she couldn't enter the shop for the time being. The boss didn't give any orders, and there seemed to be nothing else to do. As for Madanzo, she had been missing these days. She thought that Go Fugue had forgotten about her. I'm not interested in ordinary places, Nan Xiaonan blinked and said, Is there a brothel or something like that in the free city? Although I always thought that I was rather arbitrary. Isha couldn't help but look at this mysterious woman in surprise. She sighed and said, I've really seen it. I just want to relax, that's all. Nan Xiaonan shrugged, then just find a place. It was impossible for a brothel to have a brothel. There weren't even brothels in the free city. In the past, in order to secretly release some of their inflated desires, the rich would at most secretly hold some nude salons. Later, under the control of Lily, this fake saint, some dark entertainment activities were created, but they couldn't see the light of day. Generally speaking, the free city was relatively clean. How about this place? This is a paradise that I personally built. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but open her eyes wide in a luxurious room that could be described as a pool of wine and a forest of meat. It was paved with pure white floors. In the pool, there were scantily clad beautiful girls and cute boys playing with each other. Each of them was so beautiful that they looked like characters from manga. When Isha arrived, the rest of the girls and boys surrounded her like pets. She smiled and looked at the surprised Nan Xiaonan. Which one do you like? Just pick them, they are all very obedient. What the f***ck? If this isn't a brothel, then what is? In the end, Lady Nan picked 2 sassy girls, because she didn't know if she would be disliked by Miss Maid for being dirty after she played with the beautiful boys. Everyone knew that Miss Maid was very serious about cleanliness. How could she allow dirty guys to play in front of the boss? What if she missed the opportunity because of a moment of greed for pleasure? Although she felt that the chance was infinitely close to 0, what if it really happened? After a ridiculous scene, Isha and Lady Nan soaked in the hot spring water and were enjoying the spa service of the beautiful girls. Isha suddenly asked faintly, Yulia won't come back, right? Lady Nan felt that the friendship between them had greatly improved. She smiled and said, "Why, you feel that it's a pity that you didn't get her?" Isha said frankly, "That child really wants to be a holy maiden." Nan Xiaonan said casually, "Those who can participate in the ceremony, none of them are not sincere, right?" Isha shook her head and said uninterestedly, "Let's not talk about it. The matters of Free City will soon have nothing to do with me." Nan Xiaonan said in shock, "It looks like the owner of the palace of the second day is planning to take you away?" As one of the mainstays of the kingdom of heaven and the first God-bestowed warrior of Seraph Legel, Isha seemed to be able to come into contact with some of the more confidential matters. It was just unknown what kind of communication Legel had with Isha in the past few days. "I heard that the lords of the Palace of Blazing Heaven have thoughts of changing the structure of the 7 capitals of the Holy Light Kingdom." Isha thought for a while and said, "There may be a new management organization, and I may take a position in it. This is a good thing. Congratulations?" Isha said faintly, "I have been deprived of my original name. I feel that there is no burden." Lady Nan was a clever person. At this time, she said in a low voice, "Isha, perhaps it was a coincidence that we met, but you invited me, probably not to talk about this?" Isha stared at Nan Xiaonan and said, "Can you answer a question of mine?" Nan Xiaonan seemed to know what she was going to ask. She said indifferently, "Regarding your question, perhaps you already have the answer in your heart. Even if you are not sure, for you who have become a God-bestowed warrior, you have more or less heard about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't invite me, right?" "So?" Nan Xiaonan chuckled and said, "Haven't you already known the answer? Who can deprive you of your original name?" "Sure enough. Okay, I have nothing to say." Isha bitterly smiled. She sighed and said in a low voice, "If it's possible, please help me tell that person that I'm really sorry for bringing shame to the Saint family. But I also have to live for myself." Miss Nan didn't say no, but she didn't say yes either. She just finished the massage and ate some food. Before she left, she was a little ridiculous. Only then did she leave with a sigh. There was nothing to say. As a woman, she had to grow up. She couldn't go back after she had tried it once. She really couldn't go back. She looked at the beautiful girl who held her arm, sent her all the way down the stairs, and waved her hand to send her off. The beautiful girl seemed to be saying, "Welcome to come again, I'll wait for you." "I'm number 806, she returned to the door of the shop again. F***CK. She still couldn't get in. When Nan Xiaonan was considering whether she should go back to Isha again, or say that she could enjoy the night service in her crystal palace, she heard the door of the shop ring. The bell on the door rang. When Nan Xiaonan saw Boss Luo again, she didn't feel anything. The boss was still the same, she could never guess what he was thinking. Perhaps it was because her brain circuitry was not on the same channel as Boss Luo's. But Miss Maid seemed to be different. She seemed to be gentler and more natural. And she seemed to be in a good mood. But there was a fresh fragrance around. What was it? Was it the smell of shampoo? "Nan Xiaonan, get ready. We're about to leave the Holy Light Kingdom," Miss Maid said with a smile. The smile was so natural that it felt like a different person. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but feel nervous. She asked hesitantly, Leave? So fast. Have the things here been solved?" "Things here?" Miss Maid asked with a smile. "Lady Nan, what do you think the master is going to solve this time?" Nan Xiaonan's throat gurgled, and she laughed embarrassedly. She rolled her eyes and then patted her own head. "Look at me! I forgot that we're here for a trip. Well, the trip is over, it's time to leave. Boss, where are we going next?" It was 3:30 in the afternoon. Boss Luo sighed and took a sip of tea, like an old man without any desires. "Don't worry, just get ready. Besides, there's something else that I want to tell Lady Nan. It's about your first business. What should come will come. Come on." Miss Witch of the School of the Other World, who had indulged in her indulgence, was already mentally prepared. Miss Maid raised her hand at this time, and a thick account book appeared in her palm. She flipped through it slowly, and soon stopped on one of the pages. Although Nan Xiaonan was mentally prepared, she was still a little nervous at this time. Miss Maid looked at the account book and then looked at Nan Xiaonan. After a while, she chuckled. "Congratulations, Lady Nan, you've completed the first transaction as a Black Soul Messenger. Your performance will be recorded for the first time. Keep up the good work and create more value for the shop, understand?" "It's completed?" Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but widen her eyes. "How can it be completed? Hasn't my identity as Yulia been exposed? The live broadcast of a Book of Gaia has been stopped since you started to experience Holy Land book page," Miss Maid said indifferently. Because of some special reasons, the master selectively cut off the live broadcast, but later he even cut it off directly. Nan Xiaonan just nodded subconsciously. She could understand this. After all, the more she experienced in the page world, the more sensitive it was. There were too many secrets, especially this was about the primordial and the boss. "In other words, I didn't mean to expose?" Miss Maid said with a smile. "Yes, your identity hasn't been exposed. In addition, because you were active as Yulia, they did this." With that, Miss Maid threw a tablet to Nan Xiaonan. Displayed on the screen was a voting website for the Holy Maiden ceremony. Although the Holy Maiden ceremony didn't end and the winner wasn't announced, Yulia had obtained the highest number of votes on the internet. Below, there were many comments left under the name Yulia by the foolish netizens. "Come on, Yulia. You must survive. In my heart, you are the most perfect holy maiden. That's more like you. You're so real. Such a holy maiden feels pretty good too." She looked at the comments in a daze. Boss Luo said softly, "Then, although this holy maiden ceremony didn't end as the judge of this event, I unilaterally announce, congratulations, Yulia, you're a qualified holy maiden. This is your crown, the crownless crown." The crown slowly descended into Nan Xiaonan's hands. She took it subconsciously. At the same time, something seemed to surge out from Nan Xiaonan's body. It was a thin figure appearing in the image of Yulia. A girl murmured softly, "Thank you," dissipated. The crown also dissipated in Nan Xiaonan's hands. She subconsciously looked at Boss Luo with a smile. In an instant, Zhu seemed to overlap on Boss Luo's body. Miss Nan opened her mouth, only to feel her heart beating faster. F*ck she was flirted with. At this moment, "Lady Nan, your commendation ceremony will be put on the agenda." F*ck end of this chapter. Chapter 2360. The Kingdom of Heaven, Eden, his residence. The endless sea of flowers was filled with sweet fragrance everywhere. This was a peaceful space. As the last stop before leaving the Kingdom of Heaven, Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but look around curiously. She heard from her boss that she should come here to say goodbye before leaving. In Eden, there was a guard named Cleopatra. Nan Xiaonan only had one impression of this mysterious black soul emissary. This female black soul was dark-skinned and a very sexy dark-skinned one. Nan Xiaonan didn't directly confront Queen Angelique and the other two. She knew very little about the battle between Cleopatra and Meshi, so it was hard to judge the strength of both sides, but if she used her current self as a unit of measurement, 1 Cleopatra equals x * Nan? She felt that she couldn't count her hands, fingers, and toes that had just been painted with green nail polish. At this time, a wave of petals rolled up in the sea of flowers. A sexy dark-skinned big sister stretched herself and appeared in front of Boss Luo and the others. There were tears in the corners of her eyes. Isn't this the new master?" Cleopatra instantly narrowed her eyes and smiled like a flower. "New master, are you here to take me home?" She was indeed an old employee? Nan Xiaonan looked at this dark-skinned big sister in shock. She could ignore Miss Maid in front of so many people. "I respect you as a hero." Miss Maid looked calm and didn't care at all. She said indifferently, "Cleopatra, I came to see you this time because the master said that before leaving, I should say hello to you, based on the most basic courtesy." Courtesy. The dark-skinned big sister's smile seemed to be more obvious. She said with a smile, "In my previous country, if it was the most important guest, we should treat them with the etiquette of a guest. This is also the most basic courtesy, little Yu Yi idol." Nan Xiaonan's heartbeat suddenly accelerated as if she had discovered a new continent. She looked at the black-skinned woman and almost prostrated herself on the ground. Finally, was it possible to see a reliable black soul envoy who could compete with Miss Maid? Madanzo, that brat, was obviously a fake onyx soul, unreliable. "Cleopatra, this time I'm here to talk to you about the next guardian of the kingdom of heaven." Miss Maid said indifferently, "I see that you seem to be enjoying life in Eden. How about this? I recommend to Master that you continue to be the guard of the kingdom of heaven. Of course, in view of your outstanding performance, I propose to increase your reward during your tenure by 5%. Little Yu Yi, really?" Cleopatra sighed slowly. Immediately, she looked as if she had been wronged. Her eyes were hazy and tears were glistening in her eyes. She sobbed and said, "I was wrong. Don't bully me, okay? 3 tenures, performance unchanged. In addition, you need to sign in at the Holy Light Kingdom once a day." Miss Maid said indifferently, "Every day of absence will be deducted from the tenures." Cleopatra blinked and immediately walked slowly to Boss Luo. Her appearance instantly became extremely dignified. She bowed and said, "Cleopatra, greetings to the new master. I'm really sorry that I can't return to your side to report because of work. May I ask, Master, do you have any orders? Cleopatra will serve you loyally." The Sea of Flowers was very quiet. Nan Xiaonan sighed. She only felt that Cleopatra was King not nice anymore. It was the second time that Luochio met a Cleopatra. Even if it was the second time, he still felt that Cleopatra's beauty was stunning. Especially in terms of temperament, she was very good. She was a very mature woman with a story. He had not been in contact with many Black Soul envoys in the original shop, but this did not mean that the Black Soul envoys in the original shop would not be loyal to him. There was nothing to worry about. "You can refuse." Boss Luo smiled slightly at this time. Cleopatra opened her mouth in surprise. Boss Luo added casually, "Regarding Yu Ye's proposal, you can refuse. After this term, you can resume your previous work mode. Of course, if you choose to take a vacation, you can also do so." Cleopatra suddenly could not figure out the way of this new master. Besides, new master? She even never thought that the shop manager would change. What kind of reason could make the shop manager voluntarily give up the control of the shop? Could that authority really be given up? However, the fact was already in front of her eyes. Cleopatra thought for a while and said, "In this case, I think there is nothing wrong with continuing to stay in Eden. The intensity of this job is not high, and the rewards are sufficient. As for taking a vacation, I have no such plans for the time being." "I understand." Boss Luo smiled slightly. "After all, I have broken your original inherent habits and structure. Adaptation should be a long process." Cleopatra was slightly surprised. She nodded, thought for a while and said, "Please give me some time." "Of course." Boss Luo said softly, "Regarding the issue of you staying in the kingdom of heaven, I will mention it first. After all, there is still some time left before this deadline. Of course, if you decide to leave in the end, I already have a candidate to replace you." For some reason, Nan Xiaonan felt that when Boss Luo said this, he seemed to be looking at her. Let her replace Cleopatra and become the next guard of the kingdom of heaven? Her? Cleopatra frowned, shook her head and said, "Although I have no objections to your judgment, new master. However, isn't this person a little too weak? Lady Nan has a good relationship with the new saint, Madanzo of the kingdom of heaven. Boss Luo smiled casually and said, "In terms of work, there should be a lot of conveniences." Cleopatra smiled and looked at Nan Xiaonan, thought for a while and said, "It seems that after entering the kingdom of heaven, the new master has made arrangements for everything." Boss Luo said casually, "I hope that while I am observing you, you can also consider me, Lady Cleopatra. He seems to be a very easygoing master." Cleopatra thought to herself, but she nodded without batting an eyelid. "Then, I will look forward to the moment when you can truly make me devote myself to you. Actually, I am still very pure." Miss Maid still maintained her elegant smile at this time. However, the air seemed to have solidified, and there were layers and layers of evil spirits behind her. Miss Maid smiled and said, "Cleopatra, have you opened it today? It's going to be too late. I will go now." The sea of flowers regained its calmness. But soon, it wasn't calm anymore. A stream of light shone and landed, rushing straight at Nan Xiaonan. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but shiver, and she subconsciously opened her hands a little, then caught the stream of light and skillfully hugged something. Damn you, but when she saw that the thing she instinctively hugged was the new saint of the kingdom of heaven, Nan Xiaonan instantly threw it out with a face full of disdain. The loose saint, in the baby body, spun in the air and directly turned towards Miss Maid. Miss Maid flicked her finger, and Madanzo directly smashed into the sea of flowers. "You guys, shouldn't you be more protective of a baby?" Madanzo at this time held her forehead and said in pain. "You rascal, what are you doing here?" Nan Xiaonan picked up Madanzo from the ground. "You are already the new saint, why do you still look like this?" Madanzo glared at Nan Xiaonan in annoyance. "I already looked like this when I fused with the saint status, and it was fixed. I can only do some post-processing, but I didn't have time to do so. Didn't I see that there are movements in Eden, so I came to take a look? Also, why can't I come here? After I inherited the saint status, the house in Eden is written in my name, okay? Are you guys leaving?" Nan Xiaonan didn't dare to answer this question carelessly, so she could only look at Boss Luo inquiringly. Luoqiu pondered for a while, then suddenly looked at Madanzo and said, "Madanzo, the 11th of beginning?" Madanzo scratched its head, thought for a while and said, "I knew you guys would ask me this question sooner or later. This is for you." With that said, Madanzo waved its hand, and a black ball of light appeared on its forehead. The ball of light slowly floated to Boss Luo's palm. Luoqiu looked at the ball of light in his palm and was silent for a while before saying, "This is the 11th life spirit of beginning." Madanzo shrugged and said, "I picked this up in another subworld in the past. When I picked it up, it was already like this. There are still some memories of the shop left in it, so I know some things about you guys. Originally, this thing planned to invade my body at first, but it was probably about to die, so it didn't fight me in the end. What a joke. I'm in charge of my own mind and body, okay? Since you guys have appeared, I'll return it to you, in case this thing suddenly appears one day and tricks me." Boss Luo played with the black ball in his hand, thought for a while and said, "Your Excellency Madanzo, thank you for taking care of it. How about this, the cost of the next contract won't change, but the contract duration will be doubled as our gratitude." Madanzo blinked. It knew that this thing was definitely valuable, or else it wouldn't have taken the risk to keep it. However, a life spirit that was about to die could actually cover the duration of a contract? Suddenly, Madanzo seemed to see a way to make money. Should it mobilize the Angel Corps to meet in all the subworlds to dig this thing? Miss Maid said indifferently at this time, "Madanzo, Black Soul envoys will usually return after death. Only under very special circumstances will they leave behind such a broken life spirit. You'd better do your job as the Holy Sun." Madanzo opened its mouth, then sighed and glanced at Nan Xiaonan. They always had a special communication posture. "Madanzo, newcomer, your future is gloomy?" "Nan Xiaonan, don't King talk to me." "Your Excellency, Holy Sun, Can you tell me where you found this life spirit? Boss Luo asked seriously. Madanzo blinked. When it was about to ask for some compensation, Nan Xiaonan slapped the back of its head. My boss is asking you a question. If you don't say it, I'll pray for you every day. Ah, Madanzo, your light, your electricity, you're the only idiot. These are the coordinates. Madanzo waved its hand again, and a beam of light shot directly at Boss Luo. But let me make it clear first. The subworld at these coordinates is the territory of the Heavenly Court. After all, the Heavenly Court is different from the Heavenly Kingdom. The Heavenly Court may not provide for you. Thank you for your reminder. Boss Luo nodded. The Heavenly Court was indeed different from the Heavenly Kingdom. Unlike the continuous contract in the Heavenly Kingdom, the Heavenly Court was bought out all at once from the beginning. Of course, this buyout was also relative. Many times, Luoqiu felt that the shop was actually the most principled and the least principled at the same time. Even if the Heavenly Court was bought out, in theory, there was a possibility that it could be taken away. Master? I was still thinking about where to go next. Boss Luo handed the black ball in his hand to Miss Maid and smiled. Now it seems that there is a destination. They disappeared in the sea of flowers, leaving no trace behind. Madanzo hid alone in the sea of flowers, dazed and absent-minded. It sucked on its pacifier and muttered to itself, "Goodbye, newcomer. The next time we meet." Suddenly, Madanzo's expression changed slightly, and it felt as if its head was about to split open. The memories it obtained from the broken black soul life soul were disappearing bit by bit. What disappeared was only the things it shouldn't know, but all the experiences of the Book of Gaia were still clear. After a long time, Metatro let out a sigh of relief. "TSK, I still have the habit of writing diaries." Madanzo narrowed its eyes and smiled slyly. It immediately took out a small notebook from its pants and flipped it open quickly. However, the small notebook burned into ashes in an instant, and it was scalding. Stingy. In the night sky of the city, there were colorful auroras shining. In the middle of the night, the neon lights in the city were still bright. There were many tall buildings and dilapidated old buildings, but they were stubbornly mixed among the bright and beautiful buildings like gangrene attached to the bone. On the huge electronic screen, a nearly naked girl was working hard to advertise a new product, and the audience enjoyed it. Shuttling through the city, on the road in midair, a group of youths with will-o-wisp were driving crazily. "People on the ground, where are you?" A huge fiery red slogan fluttered above the city. "Welcome to Fiery Cloud City." End of this chapter. Chapter 2361. It should be called the human world or the lower world. The model of the heavenly court was different from that of the kingdom of heaven. Since they didn't have to pay the contract fee continuously, the heavenly court didn't need to urgently spread its belief. It had its own unique civilization of immortal and divine path. But what were gods and immortals? For this world called Azure Blue, it seemed to have experienced the shattering of the heavenly Tao once. After the calamity, Azure Blue underwent a huge change. Generally speaking, every restart of the subworld will be accompanied by a huge disaster. Natural disaster or human disaster. Miss Maid was knocking on the blackboard. She was dressed in the female teacher style of a white shirt and black skirt that Boss Luo liked at night. Under the podium, Lady Nan was listening to the explanation with a serious face. Although she used to be a loner in the dimensional void, she had a lot of knowledge, but she didn't have a complete system yet. The system of the shop was different from that of the dimensional void. In order to become a qualified Black Soul envoy and possibly replace Cleopatra as the new guardian of the Kingdom of Heaven, Nan Xiaonan had to cram in knowledge in this area. Generally speaking, this was a formal induction training. "Miss Yu Yi, I have a question." Nan Xiaonan raised her hand and asked, "According to what you said, there is a manager in each subworld. My understanding is that the manager is the origin of the will of the subworld. When I was walking in the void, The immortal life in the void liked to use the origin of the world as a unit of exchange. Are the two the same thing? The origin is the origin and the will is the will, Miss Maid said indifferently. In fact, the official scientific name of the origin in the exchange unit should be world core. However, the will of the world is usually associated with a world core. For some subworlds with a lower level of civilization or potential, the so-called ultimate life can't even distinguish between the two when they break through the inherent stratum. I come from a subworld with low potential. I'm sorry. Star creation technique is a very strange technique. Miss Servant Girl suddenly said. Master said that it may be able to reach the level of the Creator. Of course, you need to continue to perfect it. The Creator, the new ranking in Ms. Maid's class. It wasn't a saying in the dimensional void, but a one-sided division of the void giants in the shop. For example, in the state of the Trinity, he who was at the level of the Creator. For example, the celestial emperor of the heavenly court was also at the level of the Creator. Due to the uniqueness of the heavenly court, there were even more creators in the heavenly court. They were also known as saints. But it was a different concept from the saints of the heavenly kingdom. This was the complexity of the dimensional void. Because the various major forces already had an extremely perfect system, and there was not much advantage or disadvantage between them, they had never been able to completely unify their concepts. There were even other big and small divine systems, scientific civilizations, and the existence of other civilizations. At this moment, Nan Xiaonan was just like when she first stepped into the void. A large amount of knowledge was poured into her, and she almost wanted to skip class. However, she just needed to endure until lunchtime. There were only 5 minutes left before Miss Servant Girl's meal preparation time. Lady Nan was also excited. Yu Yi, Master seems to have left early in the morning. He should be back soon, right? After all, he still wants to eat the lunch you made. Oh, it's already so late. Miss Servant Girl suddenly put away the pointer in her hand. She organized the information and said with great kindness, Lady Nan, remember to copy today's content 10,000 times. This way, it will become a mechanical memory. I'll check it tomorrow. Work hard. And Nan Xiaonan took a can of carbonated drink from the vending machine in the lobby. She suggested to add this vending machine in the lobby of the shop, and she didn't expect Boss Luo to agree. Pop, the sound of the can being opened. At this time, Nan Xiaonan was sitting on the water tower on the rooftop of a small 4-story building. Above her head, there were several towering skyscrapers. However, this wasn't the tallest building in Huiyun City. At present, the tallest building in Huiyun City was called the Flat Sky Building. It was owned by the Flat Sky Group, which controlled more than 70% of the economic lifeline of Huiyun City. The boss of the group was called Niu Daguang. Most of the residents of Huiyun City were working for the Flat Sky Group. The rest of the business entities were barely surviving in the crack. The shop appeared yesterday and merged with this 4-story building. It belonged to the type that only certain people could see its existence. Looking at the situation, the boss seemed to intend to operate here for a while. This was what Nan Xiaonan knew at present. Your King disturbing me. Suddenly, a roar came from a dilapidated single-family apartment next to the 4-story building. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously looked over. A strong man with an iron head directly jumped out of the window at this time. His metal prosthetic arm was inserted into the wall, and he directly climbed upstairs. The strong man climbed to the next floor and started to fight with a yellow-haired guy who was having fun. Although the yellow-haired guy didn't have much muscle, he was good at boxing. His fists were like cannons, and he directly blasted the strong man out of the building. Good! In the originally quiet low-rise building, there was an endless stream of cheers. The yellow-haired guy was now standing in front of a big hole in the wall. Facing the cheers, he directly shook his butt. This guy was even naked. Bang! Lady Nan rubbed her eyes. This was the 5th time she saw a fight. After a while, a gray aircraft the size of a bus slowly landed. A troop walked out of it and directly took the strong man and the yellow-haired guy away. In theory, such a troop belonged to the Flaming Cloud City government. However, this troop, from the transportation vehicles to the weapons, were all produced by the Flat Sky Corporation. Right, it was said that the mayor of Flaming Cloud City was a woman named Tai Luosha. She was Nyo Dagwang's wife. Currently, they were living separately before the divorce. The rumor was that because of the intervention of a third party, Nyo Dagwang found a child that he had raised for many years. It was suspected that there was something wrong with it. What a chaotic city! Nan Xiaonan aimed at the hole in the yellow-haired guy's house and threw the empty bottle of happiness in her hand into it. 3 points, nice. At this moment, a figure slowly walked over from the chaotic street. Nan Xiaonan's eyes lit up, and she directly jumped into the street with a smile. Boss, you're back. What's this? I bought some ingredients on the way, Boss Luo said with a smile. I thought it was interesting, so I bought it. It seems to be a local specialty of Flaming Cloud City. I'll do it. Miss Nan eagerly took the things. Boss, did you get anything when you went out? She didn't know why Boss Luo went out, but she guessed that it was related to the matter that Madanzo had mentioned, the 11th black soul of the beginning. This Flaming Cloud City was the subworld that Madanzo had pointed out. It was one of the subworlds that belonged to the Heavenly Court, or one of the subworlds, the Mortal Realm. There were many subworlds under the Heavenly Court, but there weren't as many as the barbaric ones like the Heavenly Kingdom. However, the Heavenly Court's foundation was very stable. It was said that most of the subworlds provided the Heavenly Court with all kinds of consumables that the immortal Tao civilization needed. As for incense, which was similar to the power of faith, it was a minority. Because the immortal Tao of the Heavenly Court this time was relatively poor, the need for incense was decreasing day by day. Instead, they were more interested in another thing called merit. Lady Maid had already prepared a sumptuous lunch at an incredible speed. The 3 of them sat at a round table. When Boss Luo was picking up food, Lady Maid had already peeled a plate of prawns and sent it to Boss Luo. It wasn't the first time that Nan Xiaonan had seen this kind of useless mode. She ate her rice and only dared to show a pair of eyes. Be careful of your words when eating. I looked around today, but I couldn't find the sub-administrator of Azure Blue. Boss Luo suddenly said. You couldn't find it? Lady Maid couldn't help but show a trace of doubt. Before they came, they were prepared that Pale Blue would be a special subworld, because a Origin Black Soul Envoy had once been lost here. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, there were traces of a restart in Azure Blue subworld recently, about 1,000 years ago. However, for some unknown reason, the reboot stopped halfway through, and the next thing that happened was the disappearance of the sub-administrator. In addition, it was also from that time that Azure Blue lost the passage to the Heavenly Court. Speaking of this, Boss Luo smiled casually and looked at Nan Xiaonan, asking, Lady Nan, do you know what this situation should be called? A test of homework? Nan Xiaonan subconsciously rubbed her bangs. In this case, in the immortal Tao civilization, it should be called Ultimate Isolation of Heaven and Earth? Boss Luo nodded. Yes, it can all be summed up as this situation. But Ultimate Isolation of Heaven and Earth can also be divided into 2 types, the lower realms cut off and the upper realms cut off. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously said, then what does Azure Blue belong to? The lower realms artificial cut off, Boss Luo said indifferently. Nan Xiaonan said in shock, this seems to be similar to the subworld of number 003. As far as I know, back in the subworld of number 003, it was an emperor who cut off the passage between heaven and earth? Boss Luo shook his head and said, Number 003 is a little different from Kanglin. It doesn't belong to any sphere of influence, but a place where many legends mix together. It is also the place where I grew up. Nan Xiaonan was slightly shocked and rubbed her head. Boss, you see, my little brain is not enough. Let's talk about number 003 in the future. Let's talk about Azure Blue. You said that the sub-administrator of Azure Blue went missing. Could it be that it has already? Boss Luo smiled and said, It didn't die, it just disappeared. Nan Xiaonan said, Boss, if you want to find it, it should be easy, right? Boss Luo said indifferently, There's a price to pay for everything, even for me. Besides, I have Lady Nan now. You have always been very reliable. I'm looking forward to your performance this time. Don't King talk to me in such an ambiguous tone. I don't want to die yet. I won't let you down, she said with a righteous face. Boss Luo smiled and said, By the way, in the afternoon, you can report to this place. I've already arranged it for you. This is your new identity. A stack of information appeared in front of Nan Xiaonan. It was an employment form. This is the employment notice of Huiyun City's number 1 high school. Boss Luo chuckled and said, I just handled it for you this morning. You'll be a biology teacher in number 1 high school. Why is it a biology teacher? She opened her mouth subconsciously. Boss Luo blinked and said, Lady Nan, weren't you a forensic doctor before? Biology shouldn't be difficult for you. Nan Xiaonan was silent for a while, not knowing if Boss Luo was reminding her of something or if he had other intentions. She thought for a while and said, Then, boss, what's the purpose of me entering this high school? Boss Luo smiled and didn't say anything. Nan Xiaonan sighed in her heart, Play it by ear, right? Work hard. Boss Luo encouraged her and used the serving chopsticks to pick up a piece of vegetable and put it on Nan Xiaonan's plate. Eat. I don't want to die yet. Do you need my help? Boss Luo came to the kitchen at the back. Only Miss Maid was washing the tableware after the meal. As for Nan Xiaonan, she had already put on her black forest suit and picked up her handbag, going to work. I'll be done soon, Miss Maid said softly, and then her eyes moved slightly. Master, are we open for business in the afternoon or, at this time? Boss Luo hugged her from behind, smelling the good smell of shampoo wantonly. After a while, he smiled and said, You can't be too indulgent. Although you are in a good state now, you have to do something serious occasionally. I see. But I just bought some new clothes. Business suspended. Huiyun City's number 1 high school. Nan Xiaonan stood in front of the school gate and looked up. She saw a large burnt mark on the signboard of number 1 high school. The sky above the school was filled with a thick layer of dark clouds. She blinked and walked into the school gate calmly. Wait! Just at this moment, a weak voice called out to her. Nan Xiaonan subconsciously looked over, only to see a man with only his underwear hanging on the iron gate behind the school gate. Bruises, burns, and all kinds of strange words were smeared all over his body, such as middle, pig, and so on. You are, at this time, the man said in a panic. Go quickly! Don't go in! Don't go in! Don't be a teacher! The students here are inhuman. Nan Xiaonan chuckled and said indifferently, I was also called a student who was not a human in those days. Don't worry. With that said, Nan Xiaonan put the man down for the purpose of gathering information. Unexpectedly, as soon as she approached, the man said in horror, Don't come over here. There are red crystal bombs buried on the ground. Ew, boom! A small mushroom cloud appeared in front of the school gate of number 1 high school. End of this chapter.